Hello, hello. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to those tuning in from different parts of the world with us today. Welcome back to day two of the People and Culture Strategy Summit. Yesterday was incredible. So many insightful discussions and amazing chats and engaging discussions. So, we could have not done it without you. So, a big thank you to all our audience for your love and support. We really cherish this community. We'd like for a quick favor and drop a quick hello in the chat and let us know what's one key insight from yesterday that stuck you with. If you've been on any panels or if this is your first one, tell us where you're joining from. Happy to learn where Hacking HR is going on. Before we get started, a quick announcement. We have an in person event in Vancouver next month for all the HR leaders. So if you know someone in HR who should be there in the room, send them our way. I'll drop an email in the chat. Feel free to reach out. We'll be happy to send an exclusive invitation. All right, let's kick things off with today's first panel. And today's panel is on strategic workforce planning, aligning talent needs with business goals in a dynamic talent marketplace. And we've got an incredible lineup of amazing women today with us. So let's meet them all. Just if you could bring them onto the stage, please. Thank you. Let's start with a quick introductions. Just tell us a bit about yourself and your experience in workforce planning, and we can jump into the panel.
Would you like me to go first, Shiv?
Yes, please.
Fabulous. So I'm Karen Seth. I'm People Director at the Canal and River Trust, a charity in England and Wales, looking after the historic waterways, rivers, canals, reservoirs, etc., that were part of our industrial heritage and are still used today. My background has been mixed. I've been within retail, I've been within service sector, corporate services. So my strategic workforce planning has been quite diverse and broad over the years, from very focused from a distribution perspective of pickers and warehouses, drivers going out to do deliveries, to people working in food stores, to people in hospitality, to the world that I'm in today, where we're very broad and diverse, with having skills such as ecologists, hydrologists, engineers, surveyors, people that support people out on the waterways as well. So quite wide ranging. I'm very excited to be here today, and it was really interesting hearing some of the sound bites from yesterday as well. So thank you, and that's me.
Thank you so much, Karen. It is great, and we are so happy to have you on the panel today. And I could see Antoinette on my screen, and I would love for you to make an introduction.
Awesome. Thank you so much. It's great to see everybody today. My name is Antoinette Chukudubelu. I am in Brooklyn, New York, and we are out of New York City with an organization called Murmuration. We build data, tools, and technology to increase civic engagement across many different sectors. And I serve in the role as Chief People and Equity Officer. So in this role, I have an opportunity to do lots and lots of workforce planning and have a wide variety experiences with workforce planning as it relates to really trying to think about like our business needs and aligning our business needs with our workforce. And so over the course of time, it's been a wild ride to be thinking about how we really think thoughtfully about the business and what's happening in the business, and then what do you do with your workforce, and particularly, especially when your C-suite wants to make a change, and how do you pivot towards that change, right, with your workforce and aligning your strategic workforce planning. So excited to be here today and to talk a little bit more about it.
Excited to have you on the panel as well. And my dear friend Demi is on the panel today. How have you been?
I'm fine, Sina. It's nice to be here. Nice to meet everyone. My name is Tammy. I am VP for HR Operations for Kasha Global. Basically, Kasha Global grants confidential access to our consumers, especially women, so that they're able to purchase pharmaceuticals and FMCG products And then there's also the enterprise business services that supports pharma giants with things like patient support programs, last mile delivery, cold chain, and the likes. In relation to strategic planning, I think similar to Karen and what and Antoinette said, I think right from the time that I've been in consulting and moved into the industry, my industry experience is mostly been around startups. So you can imagine how chaotic it always is when it comes to strategic planning, because if you're familiar with startups, you will know that they're very, very agile. Plans change like sometimes every month, some if possible, sometimes every week. And like, oh no, this is the new way we're moving on to. And then you find that literally affects the workforce, the organogram, the structure that we're working with. Because again, like Karen said, I'm also dealing with people in the field. I'm dealing with people like pharma technologists. I'm dealing with warehouse operatives. I'm dealing with field agents on the field. I mean, so many diverse people, like people on the shop floor. And then you're needing to constantly be able to ensure that you have the right pool to be able to meet those needs as agile as they come. And like Antoinette said, even from a broader perspective, what then are we doing to ensure that on a regular basis, C-suite has the information they need to be able to make people decisions. I'm definitely happy to share my experience as well.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And we have Julie on the panel here. I would like
Hello,
to hear from you.
I'm Julie Massagia. I'm the Chief People Officer at two organizations. So the other side of what Temi was saying, I am working for organizations that do pharmaceutical and healthcare media. They do strategy, they do planning and buying. And so there is a lot of technical skills, a lot of changing and emerging media that our organization has to keep up to meet the needs of our clients. And in terms of strategic workforce planning, it has been for years now an evolving landscape and only continues to get more complicated in a really interesting way. But upskilling our talent to make sure that they can meet those demands is always a problem that we are consistently working towards.
Thank you so much. And I would like to know, being the amazing people at your own organizations as experts in workforce planning. So, I would like to ask, what was the biggest challenge in workforce planning today, according to you, and how did you manage to approach it?
If I may go first. So I think one of the things I've experienced in the past is that when looking at workforce planning, we've always looked at it as the current need. And in the economy of today, considering how gig everything is going, how technology driven everything, machine learning, AI, and all of that, we find that isn't working. So rather than focusing on what my workforce planning would address with regards to my current need or this 1 year or 2025, what I feel like we needed to do is in the next 3 years, because I mean, if we do have a clear plan as to how we want to travel maybe in the next 3 years. We are clear on the kind of softwares, for example, we want to build to serve as supportive services for our clients. I cannot be looking at the workforce of now. I need to look at the workforce of tomorrow and next tomorrow, like Julie says. So am I upskilling the people internally, or do I need to start to reskill them, or do I even need to borrow or buy those skills? So it became much more important to look futuristically with regards to workforce planning, especially why this is difficult. Again, like I mentioned earlier, working with startups, you find that you set a plan and by tomorrow it's changed. So I really needed to be very agile, and that means being at the fore in terms of conversations with the C-suite, so that I'm up to date as to, is the plan still valid? Are we still traveling the path that we want to go? On a quarterly basis, we are having a people forum where we're looking at the people. So even if I'm not getting the information on the strategic plan, the people forum forces them to say, hey, I see these guys here. And from what we planned or what I just spoke to an investor about or what we want to build right now, I don't think these people have the requisite skills. So what can we do? And I think that has made it much more easier, because now people focus of people information or data is now much more regular, so to speak. It's not a wait to appraisal time or wait to the end of the year. We're regularly having those conversations, looking at the people, looking at their skill level vis-a-vis the business goal, and then how do they track.
Does someone want to add on to that?
Shall I just, I think that really resonated, Temi, and I absolutely agree. There's something about we're very much in the here and now. It's a typical trait, isn't it? About I'm always just looking at what I need today and being very reactive. And how do we look from a more proactive lens? For many, many reasons, I think, that are challenging us today. I'm sure in many of our working environments across the different countries that we work within, you know, multi-generational workforces, all with very, very different needs, brings a challenging lens to that. You know, we read every day about Generation X, baby boomers, Gen Z, millennials, and the ones that they're now, I think it's Generation P potentially. And it's trying to understand what all of that means and what the workforce of the future needs to look like. I think there's also the challenges that COVID brought us all about hybrid home working, return to office. It seems to be a very common lens, and actually then people's expectations about that. So how do you plan for that for the future, especially as we all seem to be doing, looking after people in the field and those who are home or office based or hybrid or whatever version of it that is. I think the economy of today, Temi, you described particularly well, that it's challenging with every different type of work offer that's out there and having to think differently about how you make your workforce up. But also, how do you deal with that long-standing aging workforce where you've got a lot of corporate knowledge in one individual sometimes, and how do you make sure you develop that skill? We have an issue different to startup where we've got heritage skills that people don't necessarily know exist. Young people may not want to come and do them, but we still need to have them because we need to be able to continue that maintenance. At the same time as balancing, allowing AI to come in and help us, modern technology. And I've seen some great examples where, you know, one of our heritage projects worked with a local college to get some students in to come and put some tech innovation alongside an old pumping system that was built, engineered in the 1800s. Now that's how do you bring your workforces and your strategic workforce planning together to a really, you know, beautiful place, really about capturing the old, bringing in the new, maintaining the heritage whilst modernizing. So you need to be able to think of that as you move forward. So all of that is buzzing around my head at the moment.
Yeah, that really also resonates with me a ton, especially as we think about workforce planning, like in different time periods, right? So, Karen, you mentioned like whether it's like COVID, now the time period like of AI. And so I think one of the things that like I've bumped up against that has been challenging for me as it relates to workforce planning is like just sustainability and aligning that with like budget and revenue. And one of the things that I've heard us talk a lot about here is also just the importance of talent development, which we'll talk a little bit about later too. But I also have come up against just wanting to hire, right? And so that's where that budget comes in, because you're like, okay, you're trying to meet the needs of the business. You're hiring, and all of a sudden, right, Temi, you talked about it, you're pivoting. And so the view for the long term, right, doesn't always align with the view for the short term. And so that sustainability has been really challenging when it comes to workforce planning and trying to align with the business needs in terms of what the business needs now, right? And trying to anticipate what business actually needs later, and then utilizing our ability and voice in HR to be at the table to try to caution, I would say, in some cases, around how to actually do it right has always been a challenge.
I would just add to that I believe that maintaining workforce planning, as especially in where we are today with our economy, as a consistent thing that is always there as part of the culture, right? So workforce planning can be very scary for an employee population in light of what's going on in our economy, that ever-changing landscape. So by building in talent development programs and making space for those with employees and prioritizing that culturally within the organization, you are putting a positive spin on opportunities that exist versus gaps that we have. And that really can re-engage employees with the opportunities that are available to upskill versus seeing it this big challenge that we have to overcome.
Thank you so much. Those are incredible insights. And while we have also spoken about the biggest challenges in workforce planning, let's talk a bit about balancing business goals with employee expectations. So, would like to know, how do you balance business goals with employee expectations at your workforce planning?
Yeah, I'll jump in on this one because, thinking about employee expectations is really crucial and core to what we do. We're working right with our staff to ensure that they have an understanding of what's happening in the business, so that they really can just focus on the work that they're doing itself. And so when I think about employee expectations, one, it's really about managing employee expectations. Okay. And so that means that we need to have clarity and transparency in our processes, as much as we possibly can, to align those employee expectations with the actual business needs. I think the challenge with that, oftentimes, at the C suite, is that we don't usually have leaders that are comfortable sharing a lot of information quickly, right, with staff. And so you really have to figure out what is that nice balance of getting staff the right information and the right level of information that we need, balancing what leadership actually wants to actually share, to be able to kind of bridge the two, and ensure that employees are not necessarily caught off guard by the direction of the business, new opportunities, or anything as it relates to kind of the workforce and where it is actually going. So, I really think about just that balance between the two, and just clarity and transparency in terms of managing expectations.
Antoinette, I'd love to tell you, I think that is wonderful. And I think that transparency is so important. I think that's one of the key roadblocks that organizations often face, is what to share, when, and how. I would also think about how we can get people involved in the organization. So one thing that's worked really well for our organizations is not just the transparency, but also adding the layer where employees can join these task forces. They can create these gigs for themselves that ultimately can become new ways of working or new skills development opportunities for the organization as a whole. So they do feel like they are part of the change, not just reacting to the change.
Okay, I'm not going to say much, so Karen can say out the stage, because I think Antoinette has killed it, and Julie has added to that, because what came to my mind first was transparency. Up to now, we still struggle with that, and then I think sort of what can help with the information distribution is the who. So whilst we are struggling with the when and the how, I think we can at least try to help that situation better with the who. So for me, because I know that, for example, C-suite would struggle with cascading certain information down to the entire company, whether through the cross-country meetings or town halls, at least for the senior managers, they should have some level of that information. And sometimes, albeit kindergarten-ish might be, we try to also script it for them so that they could pass this information down, but in a way that we know that the company is not a risk with regards to this information that is being shared. So while still sort of giving the senior managers some transparency. And why for me the who is important is because it's easier to get people along to align, to get the expectations of people to align with the business goals, if at least what I call the pseudo HR managers, which are the senior managers or the heads of department, because I say the ratio of HR to employees never ever going to match up. So for me, the heads of departments are my like my extended HR arm. So giving them some information, because they are also the first point of call that employees make. So them having that information and then being able to communicate this, that, oh, this is the situation of things, this is what's in it for us, this is what's in it for you, this is what you can get, this is how we can travail it. It sort of calms situation down than rather making it escalate to a point whereby even the manager's like, hey, I don't know what's going on, I don't know what's happening, I can't tell you anything. So I think the who can really help. And because they are also a smaller group, again, coming back to workforce planning, because when you're building that cadre and level of people, you want to know that you have matured minds in there, so whatever information you're sharing is because you want them to know and create that transparency, and then you can cascade a semblance of that transparency forward.
Thank you, Tammy. And yeah, go ahead.
The only little bit I would add, and I think Temi just summed it up a wee bit there, was about people managers. To me, people managers are your line managers. And absolutely, there is no way a HR people function can be one-to-one or even remotely connected. So those line manager roles, those people manager roles, the key leaders are critical within this. And it's how do you bring them into this and understand it the same way that we give them the support. So I think that is just such a key point we shouldn't forget in any of this. I'll shut up now and we'll move on.
Thank you. Which brings me up to discussing about the strategic planning, which also involves in the necessity talent through training and hiring and all other different initiatives. While we know that talent management plays one of the best role in workforce planning, just wanted to know, how can companies keep their talent pipelines strong in uncertain times?
If I can quickly jump right in, one of the challenges I've always had as an HR person is the budget to develop employees. And they still, that's call out to HR that, oh, we are moving into a new market and we need this different type of skills, but you're not going to give me the budget to get what you want in terms of hiring, and neither are you going to give me the budget to develop people who are internally who desire this. So I think one of the ways sort of that I try to factor talent development or people development, like I typically don't like to say talent, like people development generally when doing strategic planning, is to try to build an internal academy. Because the funny thing is that we often have subject matter experts within the organization. And when you look at your organization and look at another organization that is similar to you, you would still find that there are peculiarities with regards to your capabilities and your skills. So if you go to e-commerce, doesn't mean that they're going to be delivering or doing things the same way. So I think that is where the internal subject matter expertise comes in. I try to focus on building an internal academy where I can pull in the capabilities and skills of these people within the organization to come and serve as facilitators or trainers, to ensure that at least, even if I don't have a budget for training or development or reskilling, I can continue to build that up. Another thing, Karen had mentioned earlier about heritage and people who are fading out of the system and then going out. The key thing also that I factor into that is knowledge transfers, whether it's knowledge transfers when it comes to people being promoted or transiting out of a department or even exiting the organization. It becomes very important that a knowledge asset is created. What that helps with is that the person is not going fully away with all that knowledge. It's also being captured within a knowledge asset for whoever, even if you're new, you can use that and learn whatever new skills is needed for the organization. And same with these levers. In certain areas where I extend an offer of contract or a consulting brief to them. This way, they are not doing their 8 to 5 or their 9 to 5. They are committing to certain hours, and then you're paying them per that rate while I'm still enjoying their skills, their knowledge, that heritage, and even during that time can even transit that knowledge and then data and information and how to do things to other people within the organization. So for me, those are the little ways I've tried to look at development in terms of people. I think someone had mentioned it earlier in the chat too. Also, with how fluid and agile the economy now is, there's also now a lot of attention to contractors having outsourced staff. This way, again, back to our earlier question, we're able to manage expectations because you're an outsourced staff. There's a certain limit in terms of how you're going to grow, and there's a certain limit you're going to grow in terms of compensation and benefits, but you're contributing and you're also getting something out by getting that experience as well, whilst I'm also managing the zero budget or lean budget that I have. So those are some things that I consider within the talent development of my strategic plan.
I think just building on that, for me, one of the most simple tools that we have, but often the most challenging, is great career conversations, by just having great relationships between the people managers and the people that they work with, and absolutely understanding what it is that people want to do and what they'd really be interested in, and also not sticking in the fact that we will always do it the way we've done it today, and that all of the job roles that we've got today are what we want for the future, and having that flexibility to be able to think a little bit broader when we're having those great career conversations. Quite often we make assumptions about what people can and can't, or will and won't do, or what they would really love to do, or where they have a passion for based on how we see them today. And I think by having just a really great adult career conversation with somebody, you gather so much data and insight into a talent pipeline, taking aside all of the processes that really will help you going forward in the future as well. It also means we start to get indications to that knowledge transfer that Temi referenced, as people start to talk to you about, I'm thinking of developing, I'm thinking about retiring, I'm thinking I might need to do something else. It's not wrong to lose some people from the organization for development purposes. And if you have a great relationship with them now and support that, they may come back in the future in a different role. And that, for me, is about that connectivity. Is you build the lifelong relationship with you, people that work with you as well.
Thank you.
Absolutely, Karen. I just wanted to add to that. I think that the idea of maintaining the relationships is really important in terms of maintaining that connection with those employees. We've had a tremendous amount of boomerang employees come back and grow into different roles. I do think it's really important to address the piece around the culture of continuous learning and making sure that that's a part of the organization's foundation, so that you can empower those managers, Karen, because I think that it's hard for managers to be empowered to go out there and have those conversations of how do I continuously develop these employees if the foundation isn't there. So I just wanted to add that. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Tui. That was amazing insights. I would like to pick this question from our audience comment. So here is a question from our audience of, how are you planning to integrate or use AI tools within workforce planning? Who would like to get the first?
I'm happy to go first. It's on our minds at the moment because we are partway through implementing, not live yet, a new end-to-end people system. So from attraction, recruitment, onboarding, all the way through. And it's been really interesting to see AI capability in that. The last time I did this was about 5 years ago, which was one of the first cloud-based systems that were to exist. And it's amazing how far it's come, and the use of AI within many lenses of it. So we are currently reviewing what the capability is, how much of it we will leverage. We're working in absolute partnership with our IT team, and they are also exploring the use of AI in the broader context of our trust, the charity, to see where that fits and how it works. And I think it's many, many different lenses that you could look at about how do we do some screening using it? How do we help with some of our templates? How do we use it to automate some areas that perhaps take us a lot of administrative time at the moment, and means we could be more forward looking, more strategic looking than where we are today. From that lens, it will help us identify skill sets be able to analyze data for us in a number of CVs to look at from there. It may be able to help us look at different job profiles in the marketplace if we pulled them in to say, actually, this is what you should be looking for as well. So we are using it as an opportunity, I think, as we're developing and implementing a new system. The system's the enabler, but all of the capability it brings with us is the real opportunity for me.
Thanks, Karen. I think that's quite apt. Oh, sorry, Antoinette.
Oh, no, I'll go after you.
I think that's quite apt. I think it's probably on a lot of people's mind, even for my company as well. Beyond the fact that we intend to use AI and machine learning for some of the services that we want to deliver to our clients or to support, like I mentioned earlier, pharma giants with, even from an HR perspective, like Karen highlighted, we're looking at it running through, for example, running through your ERP system or your HRIS system, and saying that based on the performance of maybe running it through like a department and looking at the performance metrics that have been uploaded, their goals, their assessment, how long they've been with the company, how often they've been promoted, how they've been acknowledged. AI is able to then say this individual is somebody who probably either is a red flag and might leave due to that information that's been shared, and however, this person is somebody who is critical to the business based on their contributions and performance and the inputs that have been there. So I think in terms of strategic planning, AI would really help by looking at all. I mean, we always have a lot of it, especially HR. I don't know about everyone, but I have a lot. I have, beyond having softwares, I have probably over 100 Excel trackers that I need to do. So imagine AI looking into all those trackers, which has different information on employees that I'm gathering, and able to bring it together and give me a profile of an individual, and then tell me if this person is promotable, if the person is trainable, if this person can last with us for the next 1 year or 2 years, or this person is a flight risk. And I think those are some of the things that for me, I feel like we'll be able to use AI for if integrated into the system. And without mentioning names, I mean, there are some like even online learning platforms that use AI, where when you input your profile, who you are, how long you've been in a certain industry, it's able to use that information to tell you the applicable courses that would apply to you based on your level, based on your career path and stuff like that. So I think there's a lot to do, and we'll get there poco a poco.
I love that. I love that. The only additional thing that I would say is that, like, I would just want to emphasize the data that both Karen and Temi have kind of shared in terms of the ability for AI to really look and to say, here are some of your high performers. Here's where you might want to focus. Here are some of your workforce planning gaps, like in terms of your actual talent pipeline. And then in addition to that, utilizing AI, I think in particular for L&D content, is one of the ways that we have been using it at Murmuration, which spits out content that like you need and can cut down significantly on the amount of time that HR is spending doing stuff. So you're like, okay, I need a session on this to develop this skill, put it into AI and utilize it. That's one of the ways that it's really helping to develop skill sets, because you're developing content at a much faster rate. The other thing that I was going to say too, in terms of workforce planning, is and connected to the last question on pipelines, is around career lattices and building out careers, right, for each different level and for different jobs. And so this is another place where AI can be extremely beneficial in terms of, you know, thinking about what is the next step, you know, how do you move from one place to another? And then it also allows for, you can create that document and put it in to an AI, technology, and staff can utilize it to say, hey, I want to go from here to here. How can you help me get there? So really supporting the organization through strategic planning and workforce development, not only by helping us create pathways, but also giving staff ways to access that information on their own to think about how they can utilize, going from one level to the next.
I love that, and I agree, especially around using AI to support building L&D programming at the pace that it needs to keep up with what our learners need. I also think that there's a great opportunity, in addition to just identifying the high performers, the super workers, I think somebody put in the chat of our organization, but also the hidden talents of those within our organization as well, so that we can find those opportunities for people who can be the next super workers or superstars, I think was mentioned. And then last, empowering our managers with tools that help them do things more efficiently. We all know writing goals, having career conversations is really a difficult task for managers. Although it's highly rewarding, it does take on a lot of their time, and we keep adding more to their plate and also asking them to help be the ambassadors of all the changes within our organization. So giving them those tools to help them develop others will only help the entire organization.
If I could just sort of add one tiny thing, is a point that I've seen in the chat as well that Charles has raised, that is very much on my mind. And I was probably referencing when I was talking about how do you allow then the colleagues within HR to become more strategic. It's maintaining that human element to it as well. So how do you balance off where AI can support you with some of the basic administrative, giving you insight, giving you data, but then humanize it to maintain that relationship piece that we were talking about earlier that is so key.
Yeah, I love that. And you know, the common phrase is like trust, right? But verify. And so when I think about AI, it's you can try it, but verify, right? And just verify, following it up, making sure that it aligns with your culture and that human touch. I love that.
Yeah, I mean, it's just like how we use even ChatGPT to build or provide certain information. You're not just going to take it, copy and paste and dump it. You just want to have like a basis or a foundation for that thinking and concept, tweak it, and then you can move forward. So, yeah.
I love these insights. This has been an insightful conversation, and I feel like we could even keep going on for hours. But before we wrap up, let's leave our audience with something more actionable or like a takeaway. So, if you could take just a minute and share with us what's one key action HR leaders can take today to future proof their workforce strategy, that would be really great.
I think for me, one key point is to focus on upskilling and reskilling existing teams. Culture is not one that is easy. Culture can be easily toxic. So if you have very great people, if you have very great workers, and they are motivated and loyal to the company, my advice would be to upskill and reskill them rather than bring somebody in who probably would toxify your company within 1 month or 3 months, or is not going to be comfortable with your culture and step out even before you're able to achieve or get anything out of them. Thank you.
Incredible.
I think mine would be very much building on a little bit of that last statement I talked about, maintaining the human element. So whilst, you know, technology and the support for workforce planning can be enabled and supported by AI, it's about engaging and involving our colleagues across our organizations to work with us, and the transparency that certainly several of us talked about earlier, and involving and engaging them. And that means they'll be more trusted, to the word that Antoinette used and is often misused and often neglected, for us to be able to enhance our workforce performance and planning as well.
I would just say that in terms of what's one thing that you can do, it's make sure that this conversation is happening with all levels of your organization and is part of the culture of who you are. So it's a welcome element versus a scary element for the employees within your organization, because there's so much opportunity that exists with workforce planning that employees can create for themselves, that leaders can create with these evolving, versus it being uncertainty or instability. So there is great opportunity to celebrate what comes with strategic workforce planning with everyone in the organization if it's part of how you operate day to day.
I love that. And building off of that, I would say like you got to create like a concrete process for workforce planning that the organization as a whole has buy-in into. managers need to know their people, right? They need to be able to share that information up to you so that you can utilize that and then move it forward. And then I think for me, the most important part of this is aligning talent businesses with the business goals. We must, in HR, understand what the business goals are for the organization. And so however you need to be in those, engineering meetings or those supply chain meetings to understand exactly what is happening on the ground in the business, it will really help you as it try to align with the workforce planning strategy. So really understanding the business.
Thank you so much. I just see that our comment section has been filling up with a lot of amazing comments coming on from your key insights. So they're loving it. And I would really love for this panel to go for an hour longer, as I mentioned, but we are at time. So a huge thank you to all these amazing women for sharing their expertise. And to all the audience, you have been lovely as you always are. And for your energy, questions, and all the excitement. The summit still goes on. Please stick around for the next panel. Keep the conversations flowing, and let's make our day 2 as impactful as it was yesterday. And thank you all, and see you all in the next session in a bit.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to this new conversation part of our People and Culture Strategy Summit, the day 2 of this event. The next 40 minutes or so will be all about AI and HR technology. And we have an amazing lineup of speakers. So, Jessa, if you could just help me bring them up on stage. And I see people already coming through the comments. So, thank you for staying on. If you just rolled from the previous conversation, thank you for joining. If you just hopped on the link, my name is Minola Jacques. I will be your host for this conversation. And it's wonderful to see all of you lovely people on the screen. Now, I will do the intro round and I will take the e-mic around the screen clockwise. And the first question is, one, please shortly introduce yourselves. And second, AI is such a conversation divider. People either love it or hate it. So based on your interactions with HR practitioners within your own bubble of the world and work, where do you see HR as a function in this love-hate spectrum regarding AI? Anuj, very good to see you. Welcome.
Hello, Minola. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone, from whichever part of the world you're joining in. My name is Anuj Kathuria. I'm joining in from Mumbai, India. After having spent 2 decades plus in the corporate life, I decided to hang my boots and start my own entrepreneurship journey. And I run my own concern called Cognitio, which works in the space of HR consulting, and another concern called Ascendra, where I work in the areas of HR technology. Manola, you've asked $1 million question, and this question has been asked tremendously and repeatedly over the last 100 years. Whenever the concept which we call as the world of work, which used to be a 45-hour container, is challenged or reshaped, this question comes up time and again. When computers came into the market, the same question was there. When internet hit the market, the same question was there. And now, with the advent of AI, the same question is again there. The only difference is that the emerging contours of what we call as the fourth industrial revolution, courtesy artificial intelligence, is now a lived reality amongst millions of workers across the world. When it comes to HR, we only have a choice. Do you want to ride the tsunami, or do you really want to get blown away by that? Choice depends on each and every single HR practitioner. If you don't adapt, you will be irrelevant as of today, not tomorrow, as of today.
Thank you so much, Anuj. Nadia, welcome to the conversation. Good to see you.
Thanks so much for having me. My name is Nadia Aaron. I am a HR consultant and fractional people lead at my company Future and Work. And my background's in social organizational psychology. So I love problems like this because we have to look at this from that lens of the individual, the team, and the system, which is the company, the culture, right? And I've gotten to work in a lot of startups as a head of people and also as an HR consultant. And so the love-hate relationship that I'm seeing around AI, I think it's the downstream impacts of so much change management done wrong, where time and time again, HR is getting the brunt of how do we deal with remote work? How do we deal with new tech? How do we deal with hyperscaling, layoffs? And I think HR is wearing so many hats that it can be so hard for people to get the space and the breath to really explore, because one of the success factors around AI is having space for curiosity, having space to play and to work with it and bring it into your actual work stream. And if you are drowning in admin and compliance and so much work, it's just another thing for you to do, even if you understand that you must ride that tsunami. I love that example in news. But I really think about like when you get into the ocean and the waters are rough, if that first wave knocks you down and the second wave and the third wave, right? AI is that like 10th wave that has come at us in the last 5 years even. And I think we need to figure out how do we create space for HR to really get a handle on what's happening, because they're going to be the ones who are at the forefront of how do we integrate this into work.
Thank you. Already great energy coming through the comments, and someone left there a advice from their first HR director: never outdate yourself. And what you said about curiosity. There's this wonderful saying, stay curious, not curious. And that's a great advice, I guess, regarding everything new that comes into our life. Wayne, good to see you. Welcome.
Good to see you. Good to be seeing everybody. I'm glad to be in this panel. My name is Wayne Tarkin. I have a couple roles. I am on the faculty of the University of Pennsylvania. I teach a organizational dynamics course on agile leadership. I've taken some of the concepts I learned as a Scrum Master in IT and applied it to the business world. How to be more agile, adaptable, flexible, which I think are key criteria for HR nowadays. I also do consulting with organizations, usually CHROs, around discovering hidden talents. I believe all of us on this call and all of us watching have hidden talents that we don't really use, that we don't really bring to the workforce. And if we could, it would really help accelerate learning and development. Most importantly, I'm an Eagles fan. Go Birds. The Eagles in the Super Bowl. So I'm taking everybody's karma and hopefully they'll work at it. I think just to follow up what other people said, anytime you deal with a complex situation like AI or racial issues or DEI challenges, it's really have to probe, sense, and respond. You really can't get stuck, worrying about, am I doing it right? Is this the way to go? Let's plan some more. You really have to just try things. So I believe this is the age of experimentation in HR. We went through this in 2020 with the pandemic. We didn't know what to do. We said, everybody go home. We'll figure out later, which is exactly the way you want to handle some complexity. Same thing with AI. We want to have small experiments. We want to try some things. Most won't work, but those few that will help us. So I'm happy to be in the call, and I think the listeners, the watchers, the viewers will get a lot of good experience in this. So thanks for the opportunity.
Thank you so very much. Ralph, just a second. I do have a small kind request of logistics help. In the world of technology, there are strange sounds in the background. So if you're not actively participating, if I may ask you to be on mute. And I don't know if it's just me, but it sounds as if one of you has a microphone on a headset and it's scratching something. I don't know if it's just me hearing things or that happens, but if we can check that, that would be wonderful. Ralph, good to see you and welcome into this conversation.
A pleasure to be here and thanks for having me. So my name is Ralph Büchsenschuss. I work actually at the intersection of analytics, automation, and AI at Microsoft. And when it comes to human resource and AI, I think there's a huge opportunity ahead, not only to transform in the end the function, but actually to transform the whole organization. Because in the end, what we see with AI is that it's changing how we work, how we operate. And it's very important to actually take the whole organization on the journey to also think about how in the end culture is changing, how we do things, ways of working and so on. So I think there's actually a huge opportunity, and it would be a shame if we would miss in the end that opportunity to really make the next step as an organization, really getting the most out of AI.
Thank you. And making our panel complete, Fabio, welcome.
Hello, Minola. Nice to see you again. Thank you. Pleasure to other colleagues in the audience. I'm Fabio. I'm a HR professional, 25, 28, around, I guess, 30 years of experience in both sides in technology implementation, system implementation, HR system implementation, and the other side of the table, execute and thinking about innovation, technology, and answer your question, Minola. I guess people is still afraid about technology. I guess it's a mix. Curious, obviously, how technology helping us, help the people, help the company, take decisions, everything else. But people are still afraid about the system. A mix of how technology take my job, how we come on see and heard in the market, in the news, especially I am in South America, in Sao Paulo, based in Sao Paulo. Before, in our last panel, I'm in Buenos Aires, but now I'm in Sao Paulo, Brazil. In South America is still in the same scenario, a mix of afraid and exciting how we can use and how we can learn about technology and use this technology for in the companies in our day to day. Pleased to hear.
Thank you so very much for being here. And I was trying to word the next question, but what I will do, I will take inspiration from one of our friends in the audience. And Andrew Murphy, thank you so very much. You will be a co-moderator for this next slice. So Andrew said, I'm intrigued. How much experimentation are organizations doing with AI? Are they big formal projects or small experiments? So I would really love to hear from you. What do you see? And especially, what do you see within HR being done? And I can see that Wayne knows that I always go diagonally when I ask the first question. So Wayne, please be our pioneer for this one.
Yeah, I think most organizations go with large projects, spend a lot of time and money. They try to get it all right, a lot of planning, and then they implement it and they fail. And that's pretty much standard. That's why I got into this space, because I was frustrated because most HR projects, technology projects didn't work. And I saw that Agile was a better way. The only way you can really do it is small incremental steps, learning as you go along, failing as you go along, trying different things, iterating until you kind of find what works. And so I would recommend, if I was a listener, pick an area that you're focused on talent acquisition. What part of talent acquisition is a challenge for you? One of our clients had about 60 steps in their onboarding process. Pick the one that has the most impact. See how AI could help you. It may be a technology implementation. It may be more of a process focus. It may be a behavior change. So my philosophy is start small, learn. Now, most organizations don't experiment. We weren't taught an HR to experiment, right? We had to get it right the first time. We had to be perfect, else we'd get sued and challenges would occur. But I think that's changing. It really is more of a culture change in HR. Can we focus on experimentation where failure is not disciplined but encouraged reasonably so that we can learn and get better? So my focus, my clients and students, is really to start small and learn along the way.
Thank you, Wayne. So unmuting competition officially open. Please build your conversation and take it from here. Fabio, I see you looking for the unmute button.
Yes, thank you. Totally agree, Wayne. I guess we can firstly push and influence our people, our community to experiment. Just to be take out these afraid sensations, or feelings, especially now here I guess two months ago, our HR director leader, his name is Andrea. We started end of the year meeting, and she's, look, today we will experiment to use Copilot in our meeting to guide our meeting to. Let's try this, and it's amazing. So I guess this is one of the other examples that we can use to inspire and push out our people. And don't forget, technology and AI is a human and society innovation. So we must be use these experiments to get more results. And what the next?
I totally agree. I think that. Sorry.
Let's go, Nadia, and then Anuj.
Sorry, Nadia, go ahead.
I agree with you, Fabio and Wayne. I feel like the words that we're using here, so much of this is design thinking, right? It's that experimentation, the bias to action, small experiments, piloting, right? Like that's what we used to say in our workspace. So like, how do we do a little pilot? But the biggest piece is trying to start with, what is the problem that we're trying to solve? And going back to your question, Manola, I feel like what is happening in workplaces is that we have, and I'm seeing it in the chat, we have individuals who are just trying to figure out how to be more efficient. And so people are taking it upon themselves and testing and practicing and playing. And I love that. I'm not saying organizations doing it in a way that is actually making impacts. I'm seeing people who are putting themselves out there, who love to be early adopters and getting in there, and they see that example of the job description being done fast. I saw someone talking about creating training modules or plans and speeding it up, and that is incredible and amazing. And I think we need to have that grit and that drive from all of these incredible innovating people. I'm just not seeing it at an organizational level unless there's some of these bigger organizations. I know, Ralph, you said that you were from Microsoft, and I just saw a talk with Jared Spatreo, who's leading that in so many ways. And he's creating teams that used to be 15 to 25 people, and he's totally reworking work so that it's only one person with AI co-pilots and AI agents and some vendors. And it's crazy. Like, we're changing the way that work is going, and I'm sure that you're piloting and whatever, but I'm not seeing that across the board. I'm seeing it DIY.
I have a little divergent view to what Wayne said. And I'll tell you why. The way things are changing, the way things are evolving, the way businesses are battling disruption on a continuous basis, AI is not just an enabler. It's not just about incremental change. It's about intelligent decision making. It's all about looking at it as an intelligent evolution. Yes, experimentation is happening, but the context is very different. Pandemic definitely taught us work from home, hybrid models. But the fact of the matter is, who taught the world about that? There were organizations which were existing and who had work from home hybrid models existing for last 2 decades. And I was privileged to be part of one such organization where I was working from home since 2010, when people didn't even know what work from home is or what those HR data action models are all about. So it's about contextualization of experimentation. It's not about just experimenting from a formal element of it, right? And I agree with what Nadia said. The key question is to ask, why do you want to use AI? It's not an enabler. It is an intelligent partner in your work today. It's not about just augmenting technology or augmenting what you are doing. AI has become a chief architect of your operating model, of your workforce dynamics, of your employee engagement, of your employee experience. If you look at the journey from the time somebody is a prospective candidate till the time the person becomes an alum of the organization, there are more than 300 touch points. And mind you, there are more than 360 AI solutions available in the market, which can impact each of those. And the question again to ask is, why do you want to do it? Just to make your life easy? Or do you really want to impact the business? So if you are really deploying, or if you're really implementing AI across the employee experience spectrum, is it really impacting your HR's operating model blueprint? Is it truly impacting the business? If not, I'm sorry, you were just trying to fish or trying to test waters with one feet in it. You're not going to catch any fish, even after 8-10 hours standing over there. You have to immerse yourself and then do the experimentation bit. You need to know why I'm doing this. What is it that I'm expecting? What is going to be my employee experience journey? What is going to be the impact that I want to be seen by my employees and for the business? And how will that be measured? As somebody decades ago said, a very important element, what is not measured is not delivered. So even if you're experimenting, what are the tenets of your experimentation? What are you trying to measure? Why are you trying to do this? Defining those are very, very critical. Thank you.
Anush, I would just add that I think I agree with a lot of what you said. The challenge is you don't always know the answers when you start this project, right? You have that's why I always say you use a compass, not a map. We know we want to do AI. We know that our talent acquisition is screwed up, and we know onboarding has 60 steps. So you really pick the area that you think has the most impact and try different things. Okay, you can't really plan everything you need to do at the beginning because you don't know, right? As you go forward, as you iterate, you'll find things you didn't really know. the more you try to dissect the problem, the more challenges you'll find, the more issues that occur. And so, that's a problem. A lot of things we do in HR, we try to plan, we try to make it perfectly, but you can't. Things change so much. Your strategic plan in March of 2020 was obsolete by April 2020, right? And we have the same thing politically. We have some challenges here. That's changing. DEI, we had a great DEI plan until 2 months ago, and now we don't even talk about DEI. So, it's really about experimentation. It's really about focusing where the pain is, and picking up what Nadia said. It's the energy of those disruptors, those people who are out there who want to change things. Normally, we kill them. We shut them down. We tell them you don't fit here. You're not part of the culture. But they really are the truth that needs to be told to management. Maybe look a different way. So that's why it's important to create an environment where people feel free to bring things up without fear of getting disciplined, creating a culture of trust and transparency. That's why I like to see leaders on LinkedIn extremely transparent. They talk about what worked, talk about the challenges, their frustrations, their fears. That's what makes us human. And I think if we can establish that environment where people feel trust, then I think you're going to see those disruptors have more impact and help the organization where it needs to go.
Thank you. Ralph?
Couldn't agree more with you on that, Wayne. Couldn't agree more with you. But the only fact, again, being that we need to be very sure of which route are we going. What is the end result we have in mind? If you don't have that, you're going to keep walking round and round in circles and say, we did everything, but we still landed at the same point. That's all I was trying to say. Experiment, do everything, build every element. There's a huge differentiation between AI and humans, and that will always remain. But when you experiment, keep in mind the fact that you need to have your end goal in mind. Why you're doing this and what you really want to achieve from that. Control.
That's why I like to say you need to have a compass, not a map, right? Because compass gives you direction. How you get there doesn't really matter as long as you get to where you want to go.
Wonderful energy, and I will personally advocate to have a part 2 at least for this loop of the conversation. Ralph, please.
Yes, just to close, let's say, a round on experimentation and building, let's say, on what Wayne was saying related to culture, but also what Fabio actually said related to leadership. I think it's quite important to highlight, and Fabio, you said in the end, one of your leaders actually encouraged you to experiment. I think that is also a very important aspect, to actually also have leaders to create in the end the safe space. And as Wayne said, create trust and an environment of trust to actually experiment, to actually also say, look, what is actually not working, and actually also actively share what is working. And leadership and culture plays here really a fundamental role to really succeed. And I think, all the other topics you already mentioned. So just wanted to highlight that important element of culture and leadership.
I am very aware that the title of the panel says tools to enable. However, I saw a lot of wonderful tools already mentioned in the comments, and I feel that trust has been mentioned repeatedly in this conversation, whether broken trust or miscontracted trust in how change was handled. I saw a comment from Anna Mariman saying about trust and people being skeptical about the future and the safety of their jobs. And I do feel that trust is a critical element when we think about productivity and performance before we talk about tools to enable those. Now, let's talk a little bit about what it takes to foster trust in an organization where people do think about how their jobs will be impacted by AI. We had one of the panelists yesterday in one of the conversations around talent acquisition and talent management. And she said, AI will not replace you. A person who uses AI proficiently will. So Nadia, you put trust and change management very early on the table. Could you lead us into this part of the conversation?
For sure. My lens, because I come from that social organizational psychology space, is in change management. Like, the reason why you want to go through a great change management process, which is bringing something in new, one of the huge pieces around that is trust. People aren't going to be adopting what you need. People aren't going to be changing their behaviors. You need to think about it from a multi-stage process, and some of the simplest models take it in 3 steps, where first you need to understand your user, understand your audience, and figure out what's in it for them. What's the WIFM, right? And then what's changing, what's not changing, what's visible, what's not visible. How are we going to use this data? How are we not? Transparency is about, it's a big word that people throw around, but in a practical operational space, it's HR that is in the perfect place, that's poised to be able to broker that relationship and be in a space to explain exactly why we're doing something. This happens all the time when we roll out a policy around something. How is this impacting things? We're doing background checks. What are you going to see? Who's going to see it? You know, are you tracking all of my keystrokes? Are you looking at all these different elements? And yes, we're talking about tools in this conversation. There's some incredible tools that are changing the scape of how we do work, even looking at something narrow like performance management. But those tools are also maybe recording every conversation, every Slack, every meeting, all the transcripts. How are we going to use that data? And if we can be so clear in our use cases in that very first step of change management, it creates that relationship where we do what we said. We said that this wasn't going to impact how we fire somebody if we see a red flag word coming up that you used in a side conversation with your friend, right? We need to build that trust by backing it up with actions that are exactly what we said when we started the process to begin with. And I think it's communication. It's communication, and it's from the top.
Ralph, what are your thoughts through the lens of standing at the intersection of data and people?
So I think, as also Nadia already touched a little bit, let's say, on the aspect of data and trust, I think it's very important, let's say, to use in the end, let's say, the data, and especially through AI, if we make more data accessible, let's say, in a responsible way. But let's say it can also help in the end, for example, to enrich in the end employee experiences, to say we find information faster if we have in the end, let's say, the right identity. With that, I want to say the right accesses to information, but also coming back in the end also to culture, to say the right culture to actually behave, let's say, in a responsible way with, let's say, these new tools.
I would like to add something to this, Minola. There are 2 parts to this equation, all right? I'll try to address the first part, which is AI replacing jobs. You know, a recent survey by World Economic Forum, they published 2024, that with the advent of AI, artificial generative intelligence, and the multiple different models that are evolving, 87 million jobs across every industry sector are going to be displaced. The operating word is displaced. The next sentence, 97 million more roles will get created. The mind reads what you really want to read. Number 1. Number 2, let's expand the term AI. It is artificial intelligence, which is solely based on human intelligence. All right. Human brain has 80 million neurons. Each of those neurons has the capacity to create minimum 1,000 synapses. Multiply that number, and that's more than the number of stars in any universe, in any galaxy. Each of those synapses can further create 10,000 switches. Multiply that number, and that's more than the depth of any goddamn ocean in the world. And that's the power of human brain. All right. The only challenge over here is there are 2 parts of the human resources element. There is a strategic and cognitive part, and then there is the tactical and the operation element. In today's time and age, the way we are looking at AI, yes, it is going to definitely overtake and help you perform the operational and tactical parts, the repeated monotonous pieces, aid you in perhaps certain elements. Certain AI models will perhaps even give you strategy as well. But the fact is, it has to be contextualized to your environment, to your maturity level, to your organization's maturity level. I mean, try out, ask Copilot, ask Gemini, ask Paradox, and ask ChatGPT the same question, and you will get different answers. Why? The base model, the base data for each one of this is very, very different. Yes, but when it comes to operational and tactical tasks, there are multiple agents in the world. So, as business leaders, as HR leaders, we have to imbue that trust using these parlances that, okay, your jobs will evolve from being more operational and more tactical to being more strategic and more cognitive. So, if in a 9 or 8 hour working shift, you are spending 4 to 6 hours doing query handling, operational, tactical tasks, those can be taken care of by AI. Why don't you truly start becoming true business partners by advancing your uniquely human skills of being of social intelligence, creative intelligence, co-creation, empathy, building trust, with Nadia said, with the employees. I think that communication has to be fast forward. It has to be very transparent and more forthcoming from the leadership of the organizations. Thank you.
Sorry, I like it very much, the Anuj comments. And Nadia, about change management. When it's very common here, I don't know in your region, but here in South America, in Latin America, it's very common. People arguing, I cannot deliver my job because the system is broken, or my model of way to working is Excel spreadsheets. It seems like it's manually. Not using the process, not using the systems. I still need to continue to work with my model, no new models, It's very common, firstly. So as a leader, it's a good change management. The another point, Anuj comment, this is 2,000 or 1 trillion jobs will not quite from AI. This is transforming another jobs. This is another very, very good point. And accountability, communication, sense of accountability, push out the people to bring this accountability, how I can do this better, including in HR. HRing also empower of the heads of the companies in the another models to think different, use the system, summary the big data that we have in different systems in one for we can take a better decision. I think this is a good point to add in this conversation.
Thank you so much. Wayne, thank you for dropping the suggestions for the tools in the comments. Anything you would like to add to our conversation?
Yeah, I do. Actually, and I use ChatGPT for this. So I put about, I guess there were 7 different categories. I couldn't fit everything on the chat, but those were some of the recommendations, and I've used many of those. If anybody wants to see the rest of them, I can send this to you. Just kind of text me or something like that. So I did also put something in there. There's an expression that we used 40 years ago called high tech needs high touch. But the more technology we throw at people, the more human side we need to take care of. And Sal Lupicher is a good friend of mine, a great leader. Everybody should connect to her if you can. She found that MIT research project that gauged how people did with AI. And so I think, don't quote me exactly, but 80% saw significant improvements in productivity, but 75% felt more isolated, more disengaged. And so, there's that yin and yang that we have to really focus on in HR. The more we're going to use AI, the more we really have to focus on the human element. Things like belonging and inclusion and culture and mindfulness and stuff like that are really important nowadays to help people get through that.
Thank you so much. And yeah, please.
Yeah, and just building, let's say, especially on the productivity piece, I think a lot of people, organizations try when they say, let's implement AI, go down, let's say, this productivity play. And I think, and also, let's say, my personal experience is all about, yes, we can become more productive, But we shouldn't forget that there will be always somebody who is potentially more productive than us or can do it even faster or even cheaper. And I think the huge potential, especially with generative AI, is also to think about the second dimension of it, to say, how can we actually think in a more creative or in a more innovative way, and potentially also use some of these productivity gains actually to pause and say, actually, how can we actually rethink how we are doing things? Because just pushing for productivity will help us potentially in short term, but as Wayne said, potentially even makes us even, let's say, feel more isolated. But also in the long term, I think won't pay off. So it's always about looking for certain productivity gains, but also looking actually, how can we become more creative, more innovative, and rethink how we do things and start also doing things in a different way.
That's a really, really great challenge. How can we do things differently, and what things do we need to stop doing? 5 minutes away from wrapping this conversation up. Very frustrating to see the 40 minutes gone by so quickly. Now, in the interest of time, I will pass the mic around again counterclockwise from how we started, and I would really love if you could leave our audience with maybe a question or maybe just a spark of practical inspiration as they will open their laptops tomorrow morning. How can they think about using AI for HR in a different way? Do you have a question? Anything that we could leave them with as an ongoing inspiration, Ed? And Fabio, you will go first. A few more seconds just to ask everybody in the audience, if you have found something that has been working for you, can you also drop your pieces of advice in the chat, and we all learn from each other? So Fabio, what can we do better?
Continue inspiring the people, build trust in the transparency environments for the people can bring your ideas in safe spaces for we can together build these new technologies, new ways, and new things that we can in these spaces, in good spaces, for we can build this together.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I think generative AI is really a transformative force, and I think we are also, let's say, human, and we like to do things like we did it for a long time. So really try to make the use of AI, let's say, a habit. Really try to do things differently using AI, find your way, but also try, let's say, to stick to using it, because it's quite easy to fall back into old ways of behaving and doing things. So really try to make it a habit, try to use it every day, and you will see in the end, at a certain point, it just sticks, and it will really help you, as I said, become more productive, but also do things in a different, more creative way.
Wonderful.
I think in many ways we are using it, right? If you've been on Google through Chrome and did a search, you'll notice that now it uses AI to kind of give you the answer. So, and if you're using Salesforce, other tools, they have that embedded. What I would do is I'd like to use it to summarize things. If I have read an article and it's a 20-page article, I'll put it in there and I'll give me the 5 or 6 key points. If you go to meetings and you take notes, do the same thing with it. Have it be as part of your life. Simple things, how you write. I'm not a Shakespeare by any means, and so I write an article and then I ask it to kind of spruce up a little bit. Or did I miss something? Or is it complete? Use it in terms of how you craft things, your writing, your interaction with people, and go slow. Try it. In some ways, it's addictive because you go down a lot of rabbit holes to get to where you want to go. But I think just try it. Even if you're in a one-person shop or a 1,000-person company, just try some of the tools, see what works for you, and then keep going with it.
Thank you so much. Nadia.
Thinking from that question headspace, and there's so many great comments in the chat. I just want to say, I see you. I love reading all of this. I saw some fractional people out there. Hey. I think what's helpful, thinking about what are some good questions to ask, I like to split it up. At the individual level, how are we preventing tech fatigue? How are we enable people to have a growth mindset? How are we giving them the guardrails to understand what we want them to do or not want them to do, right? At the team level, what are teams equipped with, whether it's data or coaching, to understand what are their frictions and their pain points that could be solved by AI tools, doing the things like Wayne is talking about, summarizing their Slack chats, helping them understand what's the next priority we need to be doing, right? And then at that company level, the culture, the system level, how are we enabling growth by, and Anuj mentioned this, and this is so right, about what problems are we trying to solve? That we do not want AI to be just like all the other tech that's come and gone, where we're just digitizing our different processes and turning it into icing on a cake. I love baking shows. And the moment where the cake starts falling apart, they start throwing a bunch of icing on because they know it's going to hide all the sins, right? And that's what we don't want AI to be. So how are we at an organizational level asking the right questions to understand how is this embedded in our process, in our workflows, so that it's just not another thing, another tool for people to pivot around? Because Wayne is right. You could be looking at so many of your current HR tools, and there's probably AI embedded within it. Are you using it? Are you using the thing that's directly in front of you? Because the best thing you can do is understand the data that you have to clearly outline the problems and solve them, because those are the tiny experiments that are going to be so impactful.
Thank you, Nadia, so much. And very mindful to also have the time and the space for the next panel. Anush, value dense punchline style inspiration drop.
Imagine an organization that adapts in real time, where leadership decisions are backed by predictive analytics, employee experience strategies are personalized, hyper-personalized, hyper-contextualized by AI-driven insights. Welcome to the future of AI. Remember, you are a human. It is artificial intelligence, which is based on your intelligence. Create your journey, what you want to do, why you want to do, and what you see is the end result. Rest, everything will come and go. There will be many such tsunamis. You need to adapt. Be human. That's more important. Don't lose your creative intelligence. No AI can do that. Be human.
Thank you so very much. Thank you, everybody, for being here. The panelists, people in the audience, Jessa and Sneha taking care of us backstage. Enjoy the rest of the conversations, and I hope I will get to say hello to all of you soon enough. Thank you.
Thank you so much. See you
Thank
soon.
you, Minola.
Bye.
Thank you, everyone. See you
Thank
soon.
you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Hello, and thank you for joining us for Winning the War for Talent, Redefining Recruitment for the Modern Workforce. And I'm so excited for all of you to join us. We have a great global panel and some insightful questions that we're going to be talking through. So I'd love your comments in the comment side. We're going to try to watch your comments and add you to the conversation, because this is a conversation for all people working with people, talent, culture, and HR to be a part of. So let's start. Hello. Hi, everyone. I want to say good morning, good afternoon, and good evening all at the same time.
Good morning.
Good morning. We have so many people. I guess I'm going to start and have you introduce yourself, but at the same time for everybody all over the globe, if you'll just put where you're from so we can get an idea of our global community. And then I'd love to ask the panelists, I've been so excited about this conversation with you all. Why don't we start with your name, where you are on the planet, your role. And my first question, which is kind of just a real easy one, is who do you think won the war for talent as we sit in 2025? So I'll start with Carol.
Hey. Hi, I'll say it's good evening from my side, but good morning, good afternoon, wherever you may be. It's a pleasure to be here. My name is Carol Olai, and I am joining from Nigeria, Lagos, Nigeria, in West Africa. So pleasure to be here. I look forward to the very interesting conversation on such a critical topic, looking at talent acquisition and looking at how this is impacting the modern workforce and how this is also enabling us as people professionals, or people who are people professionals or business owners as well, run successful businesses. I would say that with the transformation that has happened from a digital point of view, there is a significant need to think outside of the box, to embrace innovation and just redefine approaches to stay well ahead of the curve when we look at talent acquisition. And I'm looking forward to the conversation. I guess I would just wrap up my introduction with I think it was I don't remember, it was a comment or a quote from Steve Jobs that says that we should hire smart people, and hiring smart people requires fresh and constantly evolving strategies. So just look forward to the very interesting and conversation with the panelists, as well as the interactions from the audience. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Carol. And can you just share your company and what your role is, so we can?
Okay. Yeah. Okay. So I work with Stanbic IBTC Bank, and I'm the head of the people and culture people for Stanbic IBTC Bank.
Thanks, Carol. I appreciate it. And then I'll go to Jaylee.
Yes, so I am Jolly Cohen. It's an absolute pleasure to be here. And I have the pleasure of being the Chief Human Resources Officer for Radiology Partner. We are the largest radiology practice in the world, so very excited, not only for this topic, but the challenges that we're facing in the healthcare industry and being a part of this, because I would say our workforce is definitely representative of the modern workforce. And I am based in the US. It is on the East Coast. So it is morning for me, even though Carol, you're on your evening time. I'm just in the middle of starting my day. So very excited to be here and engage in this discussion.
Thanks, Jolly. And Alvin.
Hi, my name is Alvin Lim. I'm currently based in Singapore, in the Asia Pacific region. So while most of you are probably starting your day, I'm just about ending mine. I'm the founder of Good People Consulting, and I think what I really do is to help forward-thinking organizations become more effective at sourcing, attracting, engaging, recruiting, and retaining talent across the entire talent life cycle. Myself, I was actually the global talent attraction leader at Dyson before I decided to return back to my consulting roots, where I spent time at Universum previously, and now I've got my own consulting firm, Good People Consulting. And the war for talent, that's really interesting. So when I posted about this conference and about the topic on my LinkedIn, I did get a comment from someone I know who's a talent sourcer, who said the war for talent is over and talent has won. And for me, I think what I think is, I think the reality at the moment is whatever market situation we're in, whether it's a tight labor market or whether it's something that's a little bit more normal in the times we remember, I think any organization that really focused on developing a strong EVP, an employer value proposition, company that leverages data-driven insights, considers itself its best competition, so really right-sizing its recruitment and really understanding and connecting the dots between its organization requirements, its business priorities, and its people operating model. I think those are the organizations who actually really succeed in winning most of the battles. And we'll see if the war is really won or not. I think loads to discuss today, so really excited to be part of this one.
Thank you so much. I so appreciate all your answers. I had a friend say the same thing. The war for talent is over, but the new war is between being completely technology AI driven versus humanity driven, especially in recruiting. And I'm so excited that all of you have this broad experience as chief people officers and leading the entire people and culture strategy, because it's a very different conversation as we talk about it, looking at it as a piece rather than just being in recruiters. And so my first question for you is, so we also should, I think, for all of these conversations, have one more box where we put somebody that's called AI in the box, because it's in every conversation. So I'm just really curious from both of you, what are you seeing the impact of AI on the current talent acquisition strategy you have in your organizations? Jolly, do you want to start?
I'd love to. So AI is not only in our talent acquisition. So I have the pleasure of being the part of an organization where AI is embedded throughout. It's just the nature of where the field of radiology and imaging is going. There's a lot of discussions and topics on this. So I would say AI is part of the fabric of our organization, as well as within the evolution of HR. You can look at it from not only your overall talent strategy, so that would include your talent development, your talent management, but also on the recruiting side. And it's disrupting it in a way that I am excited about. I understand there's always a moment where you're like, is this too much? Or are we going too far in this direction? But everything from crafting a job description that represents what your intended audience needs it to say, and the speed which AI can help you do this, to integrating it in any of your ATS systems or your candidate systems, and how AI is now, when you have any type of interface with it, it helps you craft and find your candidates much faster. There's so many ways to leverage it. And not only that, the way our candidates are also using it. So one side is to say where you as an organization are leveraging AI, and then another side is to understand that your audience has access to this same tool, and they're using it to find their future employer of choice. They're using it to do research. They're using it to reformat how they position themselves in the market. So I would say it's not only it's disrupting it, but disrupting it and also helping it progress in a much faster rate.
Thank you. Alvin, do you want to share your experience with your clients?
Yeah, for sure. So interestingly enough, I think the last Hacking HR conversation I was in was something about being a strategic HR business partner of AI. And I think what's really interesting, and this is what I shared previously, and And I think this sort of echoed with the rest of the panel sentiments as well, was I think that Gen AI, like what it's really helped us to do is to start like that first sort of, just off the blocks, right? Because it helps us to overcome the inertia at the ideation stage and also to generate proof of concepts very quickly. So we were talking about 4 S's, right? Like we've got start, scale, sustain, and then support. So that scaling bit is once you start it, then now you can be really nimble, really quick, and still comprehensive to scale this in terms of both use and deeper into the organization, especially when it comes to talent. You're not just looking at TA, and AI and TA, for example, for this conversation, right? But we're looking across the entire talent spectrum and the life cycle and how AI can be applied there. And then you can sustain it because large language models can be fed and continue. You can continue to design and iterate, LLMs while it's in deployment. So it's constantly learning. So it's different from, that traditional waterfall approach where you're, okay, let's build out the requirements and then bit by bit, and then we deploy. This one, while you're in deployment, you can keep, feeding it data. And the last part is support, because it actually takes away those menial transactional tasks. It helps you to augment these tasks in a professional looking and sounding way that more than fulfills requirements. So you get to look more profesh, right? In these terms. So so where I see like the smarter organizations apply this is they're not using a broad brushstroke to say, yeah, we inject AI into every part of the talent lifecycle. But what's more crucial here is there an alignment between that design thinking and systems thinking? When we bring in a tool, and we should just see AI as a tool for enablement, are we still making sure that the way we treat people is genuine, it's authentic, especially when there's a layer of polish being added to it with Gen AI? And then building upon that, is this sort of fit for our requirements as well? Are we thinking in terms of systems? Are we thinking in terms of the end users? And that's where I think AI is just like any tech, or any kind of system or platform that we might try to integrate. It's not a miracle pill, and therefore the culture that's more important than ever, and therefore defining that strong EVP. With the help of AI to help us take away some of those, transactional, menial things, and also helping us to start, to scale, to sustain, and to support. That's where it all comes in. So very interesting. I'm looking forward to hearing from the rest of you as well.
Alvin, I really like the 4 S's. I think I will quote you as I quote other thought leaders in this space. I appreciate that. Carol, how is AI impacting your current talent acquisition strategy?
Okay, yeah, thank you. And I think, Alvin, very great points you've made. I would say that it's two-pronged. So the first one is actually driving things from an innovation perspective, and then the second is around efficiency. So I would start off with the efficiency piece. So from the efficiency piece, there's quite a lot that we've been able to do using AI, particularly if you look at, I think maybe in this part of the world as well, may not apply in all markets. You typically would have situations where if you put out the job advert, you probably get like 10,000 applications for one role. So you would have people, whether they do qualify for those roles or they don't qualify for those roles, apply for the role. So in screening, just to make it to compress what I'm saying, is a nightmare. But with AI, you're able to screen, you're able to have short lists in really very quick turnaround. So it's just significantly reducing the amount of time that one is spent on something that is quite, I would say, transactional, as well as also from an engagement point of view. You can look at it from a meaningful workforce point of view for your talent acquisition consultants or your recruiters, as whatever it is that you may refer to them as. So that's one way. And there's also the predictive analytics part of things. So also being able to incorporate AI and just looking at the entire employee value chain. So if you're looking at it from broadly, if you do have an internal recruitment strategy, so I would say maybe specifically for my organization, we use a blended approach. So we use both an external and an internal strategy because we have quite a large workforce. That also in its way also provides you the whole conversation around reskilling and retooling, because you do also have quite a number of employees who are building skills in other areas. So being able to integrate data from different platforms, which sort of also looks at what skills have employees acquired, what practical insights have they, or what practical experiences have they generated from the skills that they've delivered, and just sort of putting all of that together in terms of seeing, okay, where are you pockets of skills within the organization in a particular area, and that sort of also feeding into your recruitment, your sourcing strategy, as it were. So that's on one level. There is also in terms of the level of insights that you're able to generate, also in terms of looking at patterns and seeing how those patterns, we're able to incorporate those patterns into the sourcing strategy that is being used, and maybe from a talent management perspective as well, also using those insights when you start to think about succession planning as well as replacement planning for certain roles. From a recruitment platform point of view, there's also quite a bit, I guess, also speaking to efficiency, from scheduling of interviews, those sort of things, a first level screening as well, and in certain types of roles, being able to have video interviews at a very basic level that enables you also do a further screen further. So that's around the efficiency piece of things. I would say that from an innovation point of view, the key things would be just largely around, I would speak maybe largely just to the platforms that we're looking at, or platforms that we use, and how we constantly refine those platforms. So the platforms typically, it's also taking an agile approach to it. So platforms that we use, and being able to update those platforms, being able to add on new features to the platforms that continuously refine based on insights that are generated. So it's sort of always constantly saying, how can you make the talent acquisition process a lot better, as it were, from that perspective, as it were. So I think I would just pause here. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, I wish I could have had that all printed out on the side in the comments for everybody, because such great points around efficiency, innovation, insights driving actions, in real time changing our processes. And so that really makes me think about how the recruiting role is changing, right? Because in a world in the not so far future, we hear a lot in the industry about, will these AI bots or AI agents go directly to hiring managers? And in the TA world, one of my favorite thought leaders, John Vlastelica, talks about being talent advisors. So I think the next question for you, Jolly, really would be is, how is the recruiting role, recruiters' role, changing? And how are you helping them add more value, influencing business leaders to keep the humanity in recruiting?
I think it's really changing in a number of ways. So I'm sure both Alvin and Carol will touch on different pieces of this. But I would say they're more efficient just because of the tools and how AI is enabling them. Instead of having to argue with people and deal with job descriptions and templates, you can now build these in less than 30 seconds. I just built one in 15 in AI and give people a starting point. Intake calls, forms, how they have these discussions to go into that talent advisement role, but also equally, if not more importantly, how they're sourcing the talent, how they're able to go in, leverage AI to streamline, to Carol's point, where you were getting 10,000 jobs, job applicants, you're now able to shrink that pipeline, sort through, and you're able to leverage AI tools to help you kind of sift through this, through whatever tracking system you're using, as long as they have these AI features. So I would say more efficient, more supportive in a partnership role with their hiring managers, not only their hiring managers, but their businesses, on talking about trends. Because AI is also allowing you to be able to trend and forecast. There are roles, and I'm not one of these people that are like, oh, AI is going to replace it and it's going to be all bots. And I think it's a partnership between human intelligence and artificial intelligence. And it helps improve that partnership and makes us more efficient, and then gets out a lot of those, I would say, more administrative tasks, that allows you to spend time on real discussions. And on the second piece, candidates still want to talk to people. They still want to have a human interaction. AI just enables you to really focus on that human interaction, so that all of the administrative tasks and some of the back end work where you're spending hours sifting through goes out of the door, so you can have more time in discussion, talking about your culture, talking about what is a day in the life, being able to speak to what your first 90 days would look like, not just in a plan that's laid out, but actually with some human interaction. So I think it actually helps facilitate a lot of the cultural pieces that we've lost because we're sifting through 10,000 resumes for one position.
Thank you. So powerful. And Alvin, your thoughts on that?
So I'm going to play a little bit of the devil's advocate here, because up to this point, the discussion has been very positive about AI's contribution to the HR space. And I'm sure this is on the back of everyone's minds here, especially Johnny and Carol as well. Like, what if we take the lens of candidates as well, and if we're talking about recruitment, right, which is this conversation, they know how to prompt the AI now, like once they've sort of figured out the systems you're using, and we're resourceful enough to kind of sort of piece together what kind of personas, skills maps, and profiles that our AI systems were hunting for in their resumes, and the way they present themselves now with that layer of polish as well. And I think this is I've seen some material as well on LinkedIn and around the networks, the recruitment networks as well, Hung Lee's network and all that. And you really start to see that people are starting to ask these questions as well. Right now, we're experiencing massive efficiency gains due to AI. If you're looking at LinkedIn and its new hiring assistant, I believe someone's actually dropped this in chat and said, LinkedIn AI, brilliant, using it and stuff. And it's in the promotional material as well, right? If you look at LinkedIn's page on hiring assistant, out of like this many applicants, I prepared a list of, 10 top applicants for you to review. And we've all been, at a stage where we were fed a job on LinkedIn and said, hey, Alvin, you seem like a really good candidate for a chef, role that's just open in somewhere in New York. Yeah, apply now. And I'm like, wait a minute, I've not really talked to my family about or even thought about moving to NYC. And secondly, a chef, maybe not, right? But you're a top applicant, right? So obviously there were, we were, I think, in a place where without Gen AI, without LLMs, like taking all that precedence, and with that capability being built, those things were a little bit sort of sketchy at that point. But we're approaching, I think, that era where it's not just about organizations deploying the tools, but also candidates deploying tools against organizations, and therefore the recruiting as a function, I think as an expertise, as a profession, is now going to be very I think it's got to be in the spotlight, especially when it comes to upskilling our people. And then how do we then deal with, adding that human-centric oversight, to the recruitment process itself. And it's not just about bad actors or about sieving out, the resumes that have had a little bit too much polish or touch, applied, based on the personas we're looking for. But then it's also not so much about being data-driven then, but then it's also about, the art and science of then picking out, that screening piece, and the criteria, the feedback mechanisms that we're providing as part of the process, how we're going to audit and how we're going to ensure equity and fairness and inclusion in our practices, while maintaining that human empathy and while still leveraging on AI's ability to help us to cut through some of those very transactional pieces of work. So it's interesting, and I don't think anyone really has the answers, but and not least AI. I don't think AI has the answer to how to mitigate itself at this point.
Oh gosh, now I want to go ask it in ChatGPT, like the newest version, if like the question of how would you mitigate that? But here's my question. First of all, I'm going to come to you just in a second, Carol. But Alvin, Maggie asked a great question from the audience. It says, Alvin, if they're resourceful enough to figure out AI that the company's using, could you then think they will be resourceful enough to be successful in a role they're applying for? I have an answer, but I want to hear yours. And then I think I'm going to ask everybody that one as well.
So yeah, then the question will be, a question, which is, would we then think, that for the role, that specific role, right, being resourceful is that skill that we want of the candidate and of that individual, right? Because different jobs will have different requirements or skills. So it brings us back down, once again, to design thinking and systems thinking. And I think there are other ways as well to test the candidate, to assess, if that's a particular skill set that we want. We can go even deeper now, right? With the sorts of platforms we might have, AI powered, to help us suss that out. So the question is the question, right? Is that then the right candidate?
Let me just interject here. So I think you said share her name was Maggie. So Maggie, I would absolutely love to hire these types of folks that are resourceful enough and innovative to read the room. I think critical thinking, being able to innovate in your role is the name of the game, and that's the future. So even if it's a role where it's repetitive, where you can go anywhere from a frontline manufacturing role, but process improvement, you think about Kaizen, Lean, all of this came from people who are like, how do we innovate and make our role, even if it's repetitive, better? So I love the idea of someone and hiring them that can think in that term of how do I move this forward and progress? Because then when you hire them, they can teach you how other people are gaming the system. So I just want to interject. I love that resourcefulness and welcome that type of creativity and innovation in the workforce.
That's great. Carol, your thoughts on, would you want to hire somebody who'd figured out your platform?
I guess I'm not going to give a direct answer, because I always say something that context is always everything. So yeah, so it would be a function of what role am I looking to hire into. And again, maybe some of there'll be many other considerations I would give. So there's going to be there's no one direct answer. So in some instances, yes, I'm just aligning with what Julie said. In that sort of instance, yes, I will. But if I am not if that's not what I'm looking for, so maybe I'm in a role that is more compliance driven, a role that is more like an assurance type of role, no, I will probably going to hire that person. That's why I was saying that context for me would be, so it's it can go both ways. That would be that's my thoughts on it. Yeah.
Okay, great. So I'm gonna introduce kind of like a little bit. We're gonna twist towards humanity for a little bit, which is just a few weeks ago, the World Economic Forum was in Davos, and every year they come out with the jobs report, which is kind of like me getting my annual horoscope. I'm always so excited from the talent perspective. And this year they said that 78 million jobs will be created by 2030. They said that the largest growth is going to be in construction, farming, healthcare, and teachers. So I thought that was kind of interesting of where that fits in healthcare for you, Jolly. But the most interesting piece of it for me this year was the skills, right? Because now we're talking how recruiting has changed. It's definitely become more skills based versus experience, but the skills are analytical, creative, analytical thinking, creativity, and that flexibility, adaptability. So knowing that is changing. Jolly, do you want to start just by, I mean, definitely you can talk about AI, but, you know, is there a way that you're helping your hiring managers, your recruiting teams really hone in on those skills? Because that's a truly human-centric part of the recruiting strategy.
Absolutely. So not only on the skills, but the different personas that exist in the market. So how you approach your candidate, you do have personas that are often associated, especially in healthcare, they're often repetitive jobs. They're physicians, nurses, technologists. You have buckets. Of course, there are subspecialties of those. But really trying to engage in what is that persona and share. There's often, we don't talk about this enough, but it's so pervasive in the workforce, are the generational differences within our workforces. So when you're thinking about someone coming fresh out, oftentimes they have the technical skills you need. I mean, they can wrap circles around people like me that have been in the workforce 20 plus years, but they may lack the soft skills, some of the critical thinking, the in the moment, that if you have the tenured and the in-person experience you may have, but you may not have the technical skills. So it's really making sure that you understand your audience, who you're speaking to, that type of persona that goes with this particular role, but also where they are. And then you have some people that are very tenured that have amazing technical skills, and then they need to hone in on the soft skills. So I would say it depends on, I'll use Carol's answer, it depends on the context and the type of person in the role. But the way that we are upskilling is really focusing on understanding the differences, understanding the personas associated with it. And I would love to see healthcare. I'm living it and breathing it every day. I can confirm this report is correct. I didn't get a chance to chime in on Alvin's first statement. I'm still in a war for talent. If you're in the healthcare space, you're still in the war. And you are desperately fighting. You're in the trenches, really trying to find the best talent possible to support what we're all, if you're in healthcare, it's really around patient care. So really making sure you have the best talent for that, but we're still in the war. The supply coming out in no way is a match for the demand that we have. And we are facing everything from wage wars, shortage of talent, people entering into these spaces. So all of that is what we're teaching, which would also be skills like emotional intelligence, how to have a difficult conversation, some of the communication gaps. On the healthcare front, we're super passionate and we're still in this war.
Excellent. Carol, how are you looking at the skills of analytical thinking, creativity, and adaptability?
I think I'll say that those three skills I would say are very relevant skills. So if you look at the, I'm in financial services. So if you do look at the financial services landscape, you would see that there's also quite a lot of disruption that is happening within the financial services space. So if you think, I would just using inverted commas, talk about traditional financial institutions and then what's happening within the fintech space. So the fintech space is very much disrupting what's happening within the traditional banking or financial services space. So those skills become absolutely critical. So whether you're looking at it from a fintech perspective or you're looking at it from the more traditional institutions, so you would then, I guess, also start to see there's a lot that is required in terms of shifting the way thinking happens, shifting the way services have been rendered to customers, shifting the perspective even on the persona of customers as well, because the customer population is also shifting. So you have a significant mix of a lot of more generations coming into the workforce, and those or more generations getting into the earning power or wealth creation phase. And that also has significantly shifted what is important for this client. So adaptability, being able to think in a very agile way would be are skills that I would say are very relevant in the times that we are in, if organizations within the financial services space must continue to thrive and continue to grow and scale as it were. So I would say that very relevant, yes, for the times that we are in. And I'm sure well into the future as well, those skills will continue to remain relevant. Yeah.
Thanks, Carol. And Alvin.
Yeah, firstly, John Lee, thank you so much for that intel and about the healthcare industry. Yeah, it's been a bloodbath in both tech and HR, but I think that's where I should be prospecting for clients a little bit more too. So that's good intel. I think what really spoke out to me, I think John Lee and Carol, really good insights and really good comments there. For me, what really stood out, I think, with that Davos report in particular, was how the shift towards technology skills, because they've actually painted the skills in a few buckets, right? There was tech skills. If I remember correctly, I think there was cognitive skills. There was like working with others, ethics, that sort of thing. And the interesting thing is that of the top 10 skills fastest growing by 2030, ethics, there was only one skill in there that had to do with ethics, and there was, I think, something about the environment. I think it was environmental stewardship, if I'm correct, if I remember correctly. So, and the rest of them were very AI centered and about tech literacy, and I think some of the things that Carol mentioned as well. And I think AI should be sort of thought as like a tool applied. But I think the market is probably seeing something that I'm not seeing that much, which is that AI is such a game changer that it will be so pervasive into like the heart of every organization. But the reality is, I mean, if I look at the HR organization itself, like if we were to take the lens of reflection, are we really at the cutting edge of technological literacy or data-driven literacy sometimes? With all the clients I've worked with and the companies I've worked in as well, I realized that actually sometimes it's a case of, the cobbler's children going unshod, the plumber's house being a bit leaky, the mechanic's car not starting. And we're advising like teams in business on workforce transformation, but we're not even doing, transformative things in our organizations ourselves, or even as we strategically partner with the business to talk about things like strategic workforce planning, AI driven, right? When was the last time we actually did it for HR, right? So I think it's interesting because I think there's that inertia. And it's interesting how we don't have a skill for that yet, like breaking inertia, right? AI, I feel like that particular ability to supercharge the speed of starting something, that really helps us to really get started, to make an effort to make a crack into, to some inroads into some of the things we want to drive, like technological literacy or, like data literacy, and even in the HR context. But I think what's going to matter so much more now is that creative thinking. How do we then, going back to Maggie's comment about, would we then hire that person who's super resourceful? And I've always been biased towards that sort of candidate, because the person who takes shortcuts usually helps us find a way to save money and be more efficient. Of course, it's very context dependent, because there's an ethical thing there too, and a real shame that the Davos report only talks about environmental stewardship. I just confirmed that as the only ethical skill that's being grown. But I think there's that integrity layer now that we got to think about too, with that modern recruitment piece. So sometimes I think gaming the system is really no different from gaming a psychological or a psychometric or like a cognitive behavioral assessment. And there are cheat sheets, just look around Quora, Stack Overflow, these sorts of things. I work in quite a tech world as well, like for the most of the last 10 years. And I see that so much, right? So there you go. And that resiliency as well. That was skill number 5 on that list. I think that's going to be even more crucial then, because that inertia piece that we talked about, like how we are getting our organizations to catch up, I think that requires that resilience, flexibility, and agility, critical skill.
Interesting. Thank you. I think that resilience is actually an offshoot of creativity, but that's a whole nother panel to talk about. So we are out of time. That went by so fast. I could keep talking about this for like the rest of the day, but thank you so much for spending time with us and participating in the comments. And thank you. And we'll talk again soon. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Bye, everyone.
Welcome everyone to Hacking HR's People and Culture Strategy Summit. Welcome. Today we're diving into the power of people data, anticipating trends and workforce needs, and leveraging people analytics for strategic decisions. Hey everybody, my name is Danielle LePage. I'm Hacking HR's Chief Learning Officer, and I'll be your moderator for today's session. I'm joining you from the beautiful Riviera Maya here in Mexico. Let us know in the comments where you're tuning in from. We have an exciting discussion ahead with our expert panelists, and this session will run up to 40 minutes. Plus, all participants who stay until the end will receive a Credly badge, so be sure to stick around to earn yours. And yes, a Credly badge. Jessa, would you kindly bring our panelists to the stage? Welcome, everyone. How are you doing?
Very good.
Yeah.
Excited.
Awesome.
Nice. Great to hear, guys. I'm excited to meet you all and chat with you today. And in order for us to really get started, I think we should first do a round of intros. So maybe we'll start around the table and you can tell us who you are and what you do and why you're here today. What do you love about this topic? Raji, do we want to start with you, please?
Great. Happy to go first. Raji Ramanan, being an HR practitioner for 28 years now. I've worked for large corporations, worked in 17 countries. My favorite introductory line about myself is, this is my fourth passport, the American passport. And it's been a pleasure to be here. Now I'm a kind of founder principal of my own HR consulting firm. And we are a lot into organizational development, leadership development, and executive leadership coaching. I'm a professional coach, apart from being an assessor of several kinds of leadership assessment tools that I use. And recently, I am also an AI certified trainer in several of the AI modules. I'm very happy to have not gotten left behind and joined the wagon of AI, and very glad to be here with all these wonderful colleagues of mine to deep dive into this topic. What a great discussion. I'm looking forward to that.
Raji, a pleasure. We're so happy to have you here. Thank you very much. And over to you, Zach.
Thank you, Danielle. I'd rather be where you are right now than New Jersey, but I am in New Jersey, and it's great to be here. I have got over 24 years of experience in corporate, most of it in HR, some of it sales, and some of it sales management. And I also ran my own business for 13 years, ran a home care business. And currently, I'm still trying to figure out what I want to do when I grow up. But I'm currently started a consulting company. It's called Invisible Employee Advocates. And we're advocating for those employees who are caregivers. That is, they have to hold down a job and also have to hold down responsibilities in caring for either a family member, a child with disabilities, a spouse, a family member that needs some care. So excited to be here. I am also a caregiver as well for my mother, and happy to join in the conversation.
Zach, we are lucky to have you here. Thank you for that intro. And over to you, Shardhak.
Thanks so much, Danielle, and it's such a pleasure to be here. So my name is Shardhak, and I'm one of the co-founders of an AI-powered performance management platform called Klar. And before turning a founder, I was in HR for 8 years, 2015 to 23, and faced a bunch of, was in HR business partnering for the bulk of my life, and ended up using multiple platforms. I grew frustrated with those platforms, so ended up founding my own. And from 2022 end, almost 23 is, I've been doing Klar. And even though it's performance management, and I know this is more of a recruitment oriented, panel, what I found was that, recruitment and talent acquisition is always front and center, because at the end of the day, it's all about the people. So very, very happy to be here.
Wonderful to have you here. Thank you so much for being here. Over to you, Ying.
Hi, everyone. My name is Ying Li. I'm based in New York. We actually have a very nice day here in New York. So I'm currently leading the people analytics team at PepsiCo. My background is actually in computer vision. So think about everything we could do with surveillance videos, using, analyzing image, video, and audios. So that was my background, but I sort of wandered into these people analytics area about 10 years ago and found it such fascinating space. So currently at PepsiCo, my team mainly focused on developing advanced analytical and AI solutions to support employees' lifecycle within the company. So great to be here and looking forward to the conversation.
Very interesting, Ying. Thank you for being here. And over to you, Andreas.
Awesome. Great to meet you all. Great to be here. I'm really excited that we're in the company of 3 entrepreneurs, and Ying and I. We usually get practitioners, but I'm really excited. I've always had visions of being an entrepreneur myself. It's probably getting too late to do it. So it's actually great. So I'm from Greece. I currently am the senior director of People Ops Rewards Analytics Systems and everything for Series C scale up. We are tech. We match tutors and students together on our platform for my mainly language learning, doing pretty well. And we, sorry, you say, can you hear me okay now? Is it better?
Yes, it is. Keep going.
All right. Yeah. Sorry.
Yep.
Here we go. That's better. And my background is in people analytics. I've worked for big corporations, worked in Bank of America, Facebook, and other setting up people analytics teams before moving more of an operational into operational background. So great, and great to hear everyone's insights on the topic.
Wonderful. We've got a talented group here of expert panelists. So thank you all for being here. And we're going to get started, shall we? So I have some personalized questions and I have some more general questions for all of us. So we're just going to jump in. All right. So this question is for Zach. Zach, what, in your opinion, is the critical people trend you are having the most discussions about in 2025? And why is this significant?
Wow, you're making me go first with this talented group. Are you kidding me? So what I didn't share is why I, in particular, wanted to jump in with this panel. My strength and background may not be people analytics, though I used quite a bit of it when I was in HR. What I am finding, though, is that I am talking data all the time. And I guess it's easy to say, I guess you can say that in order to figure out the trends going on inside your own house, you need to be looking at what's going on in the neighborhood as well as the rest of the town. If you don't do that, then you're only getting one piece of the pie. So the conversations I'm having right now with HR leaders, the hottest topic, I think, and I'll give you 9 reasons for that, if I may, is supporting working caregivers. There's an imminent crisis if it's not already here. And I don't mean to be sounding the alarms, but I'm sounding the alarms. And there's 9 reasons for that. Let me just walk through them real quick, if I may, Danielle. One, the population is aging, right? By 2030, which is only 5 years from now, there will be 73 million. And I apologize, Andreas, and whoever else is non-U.S., but this is mostly U.S. data, but it's compatible in global as well. But in 2030, there will be 73 million people the age of 65 or older. That's because 10,000 people are turning 65 every day. Just 4 more years after that, there'll be 77 million. And why is that important? It'll be the first time in American history there'll be more people over the age of 65 than there will be under 18. That's really important. And we need to kind of absorb that as we're looking at what we're doing today as well as what we're looking at tomorrow. Employees are working at an older age. That's a given. And what happens with that? Well, there's probably more likelihood that somebody will be caring for their spouse or possibly needing care themselves. Number 3, there are more employees who are going to be working and caregiving. Right now, there are 53 million caregivers in America, and about 73% of them are working, holding down a job. 20% of your workforce are caregivers that we know of. But that is a 2020 stat. We'll be coming out with new stats in 2025, and that's going to be significantly higher. So that's important to know. There are more younger caregivers. Everyone thinks that this is something between the ages of 40, 50, 60 years old, but 25% of caregivers are millennials. And why is this important? Well, younger people who haven't really worked that long are at a tougher financial status than they are than their older cohorts. On the average, it takes about $7,000 out of pocket to care for somebody. And the latest data that I'm looking at, and I'm not even a data freak and this stuff excites me, but the latest data that we're looking at is that 1 out of every 4 caregivers has only about $1,000 in savings and investments. 1 out of 7 non-caregivers have the same. So this is important. Just running through these real quick. Healthcare costs, which should be top of mind for every employer out there. 84% of caregivers indicate that caregiving has impacted them negatively in some form or fashion. A lot of it is exhaustion, burnout, stress, which leads to chronic conditions such as diabetes and heart conditions. And so those, of course, as we all know, do increase healthcare costs. Loss of talent. 1/3 of caregivers say they had to quit their job because of caregiving. So there's a lot of turnover there, but it's also across all levels of the organization. Here's a crazy stat. 2023, 1.9 million women at the age 55 and older left their jobs. That is significant. And it's also 7 times more than the male counterparts. So that's really significant, especially when you have women in higher levels, higher senior positions that are leaving because of caregiving responsibilities. Loss of productivity, that's kind of a given as well. Almost 80% caregivers indicate some form or fashion that their productivity has been impacted. Number 8, and this is a really biggie, most caregivers don't self-identify. So they don't even raise their hand and say, I'm a caregiver, I need some help. Over 50% of caregivers don't even identify in that role. They identify more as a spouse, as an adult child. So that's really important. And 53% of employees have only shared that they are caregivers with their managers. So that's important. And then the last one is we don't have policies and benefits keeping up with caregiving. The United States is one of the fewest industrialized countries in the world that doesn't even have a national paid leave plan. So these are all reasons why I think in 2025, this is what I'd be talking about when it talks about trends.
So insightful and so important. Thank you, Zach, for bringing that to light for everybody today. Appreciate that. Does anyone have any thoughts on what Zach has told us about? All right, moving on to the next question. Ying.
I do. Sure, and sure. Sorry, if Ying wants to go first, I'll go next.
No, go ahead.
First of all, Zach, I think you bring a problem which is not just US-centric, but I think the impact is more US-centric than other countries of the world where there is a more supportive social system. The problem of caregiving is not as acute in other countries, particularly Europe or some parts of Asia, as it is in the US, because the social system takes care of it. We don't do that well in the US. I completely agree with you. Personally, I can tell you, I'm a grandmom and I am a caregiver, and my whole life has changed. In some ways positive, in some ways very heavy, loaded, and stressed, because I'm a caregiver along with my daughter for both my grandkids. And I'm just talking about myself. There are millions of people like me. And my daughter has left her full-fledged, high-paying tech job, because she feels that the stress is insurmountable. Okay. Now, how it actually impacts the topic of today, what we are going to talk, I think this is an important aspect of people analytics that we need to actually emphasize on, where the people, their strength and their target and their focus is right now. It's important from a people analytics perspective, because wellness and balancing work life is an important aspect of people analytics. And I don't know how much, as you rightly said, people declaring themselves as caregivers, maybe they're not professional caregivers like the nannies we have to help with my grandkids, but everybody is a caregiver in some way, form, or shape in the category of people we're talking about. And it impacts the workplace. It impacts how we look at people processes. So I just want to table it here. I think you brought about a great point, but I'm just trying to link it with the topic we are talking about today.
Yeah, if I can come in here to add another flavor of the people analytics to this topic. So at PepsiCo, at some point, we did some analysis where we want to understand the attrition behavior patterns of our female employees when they come back from their maternity leave. So, the goal there is that we want to revisit our benefit for our, for our female employees, or even for those, dads, right, when they take the paternity leave. So we want to understand, is our current benefit good enough, that meet our employees' need. So we look at the females' behavior attritions, 1 month after they come back to the work, 2 months, 3 months, or even, within 1 year. So of course, as you can imagine, that attrition behavior does change over the time. And then we also compare that attrition pattern against the regular employees or females who didn't take the maternity leave. And the insights, the findings from there is really eye-opening. And, we didn't do any fancy like machine learning or AI, right? But, some kind of simple attrition behavior analysis, really can bring some important insights. And that information does, help or as one important data factors for the benefit team to kind of revisit our benefit. Yeah.
Right. And anything further about what Ying told us?
Shartok, I'm very curious. Sorry for calling you out. I'm curious to get your perspective on this whole discussion. You've been into the people analytics and getting employees engaged into the performance management system, and how does this play into the whole body of work you are doing, Shartok?
I think it plays out in multiple number of ways, but the bedrock of everything what we have understood is that if you are not measuring, you're not changing. And what is really important also to consider is that sometimes when we start to measure, the process of measuring becomes an end goal in itself rather than what you're trying to change, right? And we need to be cognizant about that. And that's what something we have learned over the years. We advise companies that it's great that you're measuring goals, you're measuring performance. What are you really linking it with, right? Because at the end of the day, you need data to make people do better, feel better, and really be a proud of the company they're a part of. What Zach mentioned, I think I'm one of the few who's been fortunate enough. I'm not a caregiver in the sense of the term yet, right? I do have aging parents, but what Zach mentioned was really eye-opening, and the stats speak for themselves. So another thing what we have realized is when HR leaders have to generate buy-in, if you start your sentences with "I think," the probability of buy-in goes down by 80%, 90%, right? Nobody cares what you think. You need to weave a story with the data which you have. And so measuring the data and people analytics becomes important. Just straight flat out data also doesn't work. You need to weave a narrative and a story and how it impacts your people, the company, and so on and so forth. That's when we have found, maximum buy-in is generated. So yeah, that's been my experience so far.
And Shartok, I think you bring a great point. You measure something and you might find out what you want to focus on because you measured something and that gave you some insights, right? So to have those insights, we have to measure. For example, if we want to look at the turnover rate, how many people have exited the workforce because they were in primary caregiving roles, I think that can give some wonderful insights. Another whole thing, and this is unfortunately very US specific, specific is, I always say this to my leaders: when you have talent, there might be talent who is in the fast lane. You know, you're a high potential, high performer. But when that individual is making the family, as Indra Nooyi said, the peak of your career time is also peak of your family time. Unfortunately, that's how the numbers work. When you're focusing on your career, that is the time you have to make your family as well. I mean, like, this is something we've never been able to change over the years. With all the genetic issues, nobody wants to have kids at 40 plus or 50 plus, right? So that is another problem that we have. So there should be indication where people need to move into the slow lane, and then you have to have the system triggered to bring them back into the fast lane. Otherwise, you're going to lose them 4 or 5 years later when they are still capable, but they have lost the track. And those are things that we need to power our talent system with AI kind of intervention. I feel, you know, one of the things we could do to make sure that things are not lost as people evolve.
Oh, absolutely. And that's, sorry, I'll just take a minute more. That's honestly what we have seen our customers do, quite a few of them. So majority of our companies that we partner with, they are in the US. I'm in Los Angeles, close to LA. And what we have seen usually is that people who trust data and have a long-term outlook that, hey, this is what the data sort of says, and these are the actions which we take, this will impact positively. If you have that outlook of acting on data, it makes a lot more sense, and you see results after a certain point of time. But there are some data points, like what Zach was mentioning, and it was so eye-opening, that there are some data points, there are no quick fixes. I mean, you can have good benefits, you can have good policies, etc., but you will see the impact after a point of time. You need to be patient to see that impact. So that's another trait which we have usually seen in forward-thinking companies.
And I think it's not just the corporate or the world of work that is involved in this. I think there is a social system. I think we need to have policies. Why is US the only country, with social security systems having only 8 weeks and sometimes 6 weeks of maternity leave? Has anybody questioned that? Has anybody challenged that? And it's not just maternity leave. It's like people having to have a sabbatical just to play a caregiving role. Those are impossible things. Sabbatical as such is looked very negatively in the US compared to other countries. Nobody wants to put in their LinkedIn profile, I took this 1 year off because I was caregiving, because I just started my family. Nobody wants to do that. But if you see in Europe, very advanced country in terms of thinking on these lines, where people work-life balance and well-being is given very high importance, where you will see a lot of people, a very, very senior leader I've known of in the companies I work for, will go on a sabbatical because he would say, I've had kids after so many years, I just want to take a sabbatical. And people in the US would go like, is this person crazy? He's in the peak of his career and he wants to go on a sabbatical? So those are things that really, I think the world of analytics needs to highlight, like, what is it that we are suffering? We are the most provided country, yet we are the least in terms of happiness index. That's very, very concerning.
Let's give this back to Danielle, because I'm so freaking excited that you guys are really into this, that on a panel of people analytics that we're discussing this important topic. You guys have made my day, my year. And by the way, Raji, on LinkedIn, if I have anything to do with it, by the end of this year, you will start seeing more and more people put gaps in their LinkedIn as caregiver, if I have anything to say or do about it. So Danielle,
would
please
love that. And it's
bring
not
this shit
just
back on,
individuals.
Danielle.
This is fantastic. Those 7 stats, okay, have generated a lot of discussion and a lot of great insight. So thank you, Zach, for that. Thank you. All right, guys, we're gonna move along here with some questions for Ying. Ying, how can people analytics be leveraged to understand talent flow trends, both inflow and outflow? How does analyzing these trends support proactive workforce planning?
Yeah, happy to. So, I assume everyone here is familiar with the talent flow, this concept, right? We have people flowing and people leave. So when we talk about inflows, usually we mean the external hiring as well as internal promotions, and outflows are, when people choose to leave the company, either voluntarily or involuntarily. So, so when it comes to the inflows, people analytics can be leveraged in various ways. And one way is to forecast the hiring volume, at location level, job level, or even job roles or job skills level, right? So if we are able to forecast that, then with the insights from such analysis, our TA teams can be more prepared. They can be proactive in sourcing external candidates for particular location, level, or job skills, right? So that information definitely, so that will help shorten the time to fill, as well as to minimize the, the loss of productivity, right? Now, on the outflow perspective, one way is to forecast what is the attrition rate. If you think about, like for PepsiCo, we have 2/3 of our employees in the frontline space, right? Now for frontline space, we tend to have a little bit higher attrition rate than the office workers. So in that case, we would like to understand what is the attrition rate for the next month or quarter, right? So that the site leaders can be more proactive to, to backfill those roles. Now, on the other hand, we can also kind of predict the attrition risk at the individual employee level, right? So for this given employee, what is the likelihood that this employee is going to leave the company within the next 12 months, right, on a voluntary basis? And, equipped with such information, then a lot of things can be acted upon. For instance, proactive retentions, right? You could it could be both monetary or non-monetary based. You could conduct stay interviews, have career conversations, or you can, raise salaries, right? Give cash awards, whichever way that makes sense to retain those talents, which are very important for your business. Right. So once you couple all these, inflows, outflows, then all this information can be leveraged for strategic labor planning, right? Ultimately, labor planning is about you match with this, you match the skill demand with the skill supply, right? So now you know what kind of skills you want and what kind of skills that that you already have. Then you can apply advanced analytics or AI technologies to to do that planning.
That's great. Does anyone have any feedback for Ying?
Yeah, I think what Ying is describing, and I hope you can hear me better now. I think what Ying is describing is spot on. The only feedback I would add on to that is I've always advocated for people analytics to be an enabler of systemic thinking and systems thinking in HR. And we've seen that many a time there were solutions that were very not forward thinking, not taking into account all of the inflows and outflows. An example I sometimes think about is, and I know this is a hot topic now, so I hope it's not as ordinary, but gender diversity, right? So here in Europe, we still consider gender diversity to be very important, right? So a lot of the times I've seen our leaders say, so gender diversity is poor, what do? We just hire more women. That's obviously not the solution, right? There should be systemic thinking is, why is gender diversity poor? If you hire more women and then you hire them into roles that are unsuitable for them, they will just leave. And then you will have another problem symptom again, right? In systemic thinking. So, there needs to be a whole consideration. What is the real problem? Do we have enough roles, proper diverse roles, proper job descriptions, right? Proper skills like Ying described, right? That you can forecast what you're going to need and then solve that problem. So, I think people analytics is really, really key, not just on the data it provides, but the ability to leverage, that systemic thinking across all of HR leaders and functions.
Andreas, I really like the point you brought about, and Ying, you opened the door for a great conversation about how to use people analytics in the right way. I think in my 28 years of my career in HR, whenever I have spoken numbers, I've been able to make a business case much better, but also provide the caution side. And Andreas, I was in the same journey as you mentioned with this very large corporation. We said, looking at the numbers, oh, we need more women leaders at the top. And this company is French based, you know, in Europe, they had implemented 1/3 in board roles for women, you know, at that point of time. So everyone goes, oh, we need to promote more women. We need to have that numbers, you know. So immediately they go after numbers, which is actually dangerous. So they would say in the next 3 years, we are going to have 33% of senior roles, you know, and then the pipeline too, right? You have to start promoting people from bottoms up, right? So that caused a big chaos, because women who got promoted because they performed well and because they were capable, they were labeled as people getting promoted because they were part of that, you know, that quota system. And then we were not prepared. I mean, it was an engineering company, and so a lot of engineers, typically males, you know, our numbers have changed globally for women engineers, but at that point of time, it was still dominated. The senior lot was dominated by men, and suddenly all these women occupy leadership positions. They work harder and they look, you know, with their heads down. They are just firing away. The environment was not prepared for it. So the biggest mistake we did, and we had huge turnover of women leaders. They went to tech companies where women were more welcome than, you know, manufacturing kind of an environment dominated by male engineers. So great point.
If I could just add real quick too, and again, Shartak, I love what you said, you know, about data, and I've been reading the chat room. It's blown up in terms of how to use data, and there's two schools of thought on that, right? You could use data and say, hey, look, I told you I was right, or you can look at this data and say, well, what is it like in your world? Just look at our chat. Everybody is talking about a caregiver experience. So the goal here is to use your data to get the conversations going. That's the important part. And then you can validate or try to figure out what we need to do for the future. So I just wanted to say I've really just appreciated this conversation.
And Zach, while I have you on the line here, what is one method HR should consider in identifying trends that matter?
Well, great segue. Start having the conversations. I think more senior leaders, if HR folks can get more senior leaders to share their experiences, vulnerably, be a little vulnerable, that will open up the doors so that folks can come forward and say, hey, you know, I'm a caregiver. Hey, I'm a caregiver. And all of a sudden you bring a group together, like a resource group, and start asking them, hey, what do we need for today and tomorrow to be able to support you? I mean, if you look at the folks that are leaving, what did I say, 1/3? If 20% of your workforce, just look at the numbers. If you have 10,000 employees in your company, and that's 2,000 caregivers, and 1/3 are leaving. That's 667 folks leaving your organization. You know, the exit interviews, you try to do those as great as you can, but at the end of the day, you really have to think about what kind of questions should we be asking both the folks that work for us and the folks that are leaving us. And by the way, AI, if you don't know a lot about caregiving, just get AI to do that for you. I mean, they will use tons of the studies that I've quoted and really help you formulate some questions that you can get some meaningful answers to. And then you can really start leveraging your data.
Zach, I love what you said. I recently did a sentiment analysis of exit interviews, which had open comments, conversations. And we looked at data for the last 10 years and targeted the last 3 years, and the results were amazing. That's not what a normal exit analysis would actually provide. But the most important thing is we also recommended that more than doing exit interviews, we should start doing stay interviews and third-party stay interviews, and that'll yield better results. And definitely, of course, third-party exit interviews for sure.
Right. I've got a few more questions, and these are just open for anyone to jump in and respond to, okay? So what are the biggest challenges HR teams face when acting on people analytics insights?
I can take that, since I work with HR teams day in, day out. One of the things I've noticed is that there are a lot of challenges, right? And HR is dealing with literally so many things that other businesses don't know about. But one of the things I would definitely highlight is the first thing that we should question is, why are we doing this, right? Even if we are, doing data, even if we are mining data, what is the end outcome that we are looking towards? It's okay if we, go on a joyride with a lot of data. That's absolutely fine. There might be certain linkages which can come up, but the challenges which are there existing, if a company identifies that there is early attrition, if a company identifies that top performers are leaving, it means that those are the challenges to solve, and then we start working backwards from there, and then we start pulling in data which sort of moves towards there. Another thing which I've really seen so often is cherry picking data, right? Which is that this fits my narrative, and I'm going to use this data to present on this podium and so on and so forth. But correlation does not mean causation, right? And we need to be very, very clear about that. So if you are clear about these 2 or 3 things and work backwards from the challenges, can be early attrition, can be low engagement, can be literally anything else, I think then the data makes a lot of sense if presented holistically. That's my take.
Yeah, I definitely agree with Sarthak on the point that we need to invite the key stakeholders or key sponsored users early in the stage, to co-design the use case, to co-create the use case and co-design the solutions, right? So that once the solution is developed, it's ready to be adopted and even integrated into the existing workflow to create values, right? So definitely agree on that point. One thing I would like to point out is the building the data trust. So let's say, you develop the solution. We talked about, attrition risk prediction, right? Now you have a predicted attrition risk, but, you need people to kind of trust the data and be willing to use the data and then take action upon that, right? If they do not trust you, they wouldn't really want to use your data. And then there's no power of the insights. So I think that's very important, from my personal experience.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Just to close on that point as well, I think definitely agree with Sarthak on the cherry picking. Right? I think it's highly important. The only other thing I would add is let's not forget the human element. We talk about data, but it was great having Zach on the call as well, bringing in a slightly different perspective. I think behind what I always say to my teams as well is that behind every data point there's a human. And a lot of the decisions that we make on some of that data will affect that human's life in one shape or another, right? So it's really important to be really robust, not cherry picking, be very scientifically accurate, etc., because there is a lot of value and effect on what we do.
Thank you, Andreas. And one last question before we wrap up, we just have a couple little minutes left, is if HR teams could implement just one change based on today's discussion, what would you recommend?
I think I would recommend HR people to, first of all, feed data appropriately, number one. And I'll give you a small example. Ying and Andreas touched upon it. When you have data which is not fully matured and many times incorrect, it's basically garbage in, garbage out. Exit interview, for example, they just say voluntary, involuntary. Give me a freaking break. What does that really do to analyze that data? Nothing. There's no scope for analysis when you have that kind of a data. So HR has to be true to itself and be the spokesperson for data, people related, and should make sure that there is representative, real, meaningful data. Secondly, how to make use of the data, provide insights. Sometimes you'll get pushback when you provide those insights from those data. People will not like it, but you're the champion for change and you're the champion for the people cause. So play that role well. Thirdly, last but not the least, HR should be data focused. themselves. No people decision should be taken without insights from the data. It should almost be a rule, like what Google used to do, or many other organizations. So those are the three things I would say HR can do, and it's a long journey, but we need to start somewhere.
I definitely echo that point, Reggie, the building the data literacy with the HR team. And that sort of relates to the mindset shift, right? Let's really embrace the power of the data, the power of insights, and leverage that to help them, to be more productive, right? And happier, more engaged.
I think
Thank you, Reggie.
Sorry, go ahead. No, I was just saying that in my experience, HR has always been referred to the softer side, which never made sense to me. So in order to change that image, like Ying mentioned, we need to start leading with data, right? Yeah, go ahead, Daniel. I know we are almost out of time.
Thank you for wrapping that up, Shartak. And thank you all for being here today. We had some great conversations. 40 minutes flew by. I don't know if it flew by for you guys, but it did for me. And the next panel is the future of compensation, balancing pay equity, benefits, and performance. So stay tuned. Thank you all for joining, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye, everybody.
Hello, everyone, and good whatever moment of this wonderful day you are enjoying on your time zones. And welcome to the last panel of the second day of our People and Culture Strategy Summit. My name is Minola Jacques. I will be your co-host for the next 40 minutes or so. We have our wonderful team backstage taking care of us. And we have an amazing lineup of speakers who are just dying to come and share their insights and learning and inspiration and energy around the future of compensation, balancing pay equity, benefits, and performance. While I am welcoming all of you who just jumped on the link or you very graciously rolled from the previous conversations, Jessa, if we could have the faces popping up on the screen, and just as you settle in and make sure you can reach the unmute button very quickly, I will encourage everybody in the audience to just join everybody that we had on these 2 days. Such energy in the comments. Consider the questions open to all of you just as much as they are open to our panelists, and make sure that we all learn together. A quick logistics, hygiene, ask for help. When you are not actively contributing, if you can be on mute, because technology is great until it isn't with the background noise. We will make the best out of our time today. And what I will do, I will kick us off with just passing the e-mic along the screen clockwise as I can see you. First, if you can just shortly introduce yourselves, and also, what about the topic of the future and compensation? It's so meaningful to you that you said, I will take time and energy and be part of this panel today. Suzanne, great to see you. Welcome.
Good morning, good afternoon, everyone, and hello, Manola. We haven't met. Lovely to meet you, albeit virtually. So Suzanne McGovern, I'm a Chief People Officer. I've been in the people space for a long time. I will not give away anything further than that, but a while. Fantastic topic. Looking forward to learning from all my esteemed panelists here on balancing future kind of pay equity, benefits, and performance. It really is one of the motivators we have and the levers we have as people leaders. But it's also, I'm going to be a little bit controversial here. I think if you do it well and equitably and transparently, people don't come to work for massage chairs and snacks. They don't come to work for, just an amazing, they'd come to work to do amazing things in a team and be rewarded fairly for it. I'm going to set my stall out early. That's what I believe. And I think if you're doing that right and moving forward in a very personal way, especially on the benefit side, I think the companies that follow that kind of mantra will endure.
Thank you very, very much. Joe, welcome to our conversation.
Right. Hi, everyone. It's great to be here and great to meet everyone virtually. I'm Joe Pope. I'm based in the Chicago area, and I'm the Director of People Operations at a law firm called Nixon Peabody. Reason that I'm here and why I'm really passionate about this subject is that, frankly, numbers don't lie. Compensation is a measurement among many other measurements on the value that an organization in the market gives to people who perform certain roles. And I think in this era of transparency, it's really causing companies to really explain themselves, rightfully so, to employees and management as to how it determines that value. So I'm really looking forward to hearing more about what other organizations are doing.
Thank you. Rich, good to have you with us.
Thank you. So Rich Bergner, I'm the head of compensation at Edward Jones in the Austin, Texas area. And very similar to kind of what Suzanne and Joe had mentioned as well, kind of the passion that I have for this particular topic is compensation is a quickly evolving topic. And I think what we've seen over the last couple of years, what was good yesterday is not good today and may not be good for tomorrow. And I think obviously with kind of the new, presidential kind of perspective that we've seen here in the U.S., it's going to have a lot of impact, and it's going to change the narrative, I think, that we're looking at in terms of this particular topic at the end of the day. So really passionate about it because this is, how we move the needle and how we delineate and differentiate our competitive positions as firms and as organizations.
Thank you. Shadi, good to see you. Welcome.
Pleasure, and very happy to meet all of you.
Thank you for the opportunity. My name is Shadi, and I'm a human resources director for one of these manufacturing companies. I've been in the field for the last 26 years, luckily, human development. And I'm a university lecturer for similar topic about compensation and pay equity. And to be honest, it's a challenge for me always to balance between the theory and the practice of these topics. Maybe you agree with me on that. So at the university, we really teach the people and let them know about pay structure and how to make it right and how to put it the right way. Still, there are some struggles when it comes to reality, linking theories of pay structure and pay equity when it comes to the actual market. Very much looking forward and pleasure to see you all. Thank you.
Thank you. And Denise, so happy technology is with us today and uses its power for the better. And we can have you on the screen with good audio. Welcome.
Hi, I'm Denise Libatra. I'm the founder of a compensation boutique company called Prosper Consulting. I have more than 30 years of experience doing compensation work for everything from Fortune 500 companies that are global to small companies with less than 50 employees. I have been passionate about this work, paying competitively, equitably, and within budget for more than 30 years. I also am a pay negotiation coach. So I teach people how to ask for more money and get paid what they're worth and have careers aligned with their personal values. And I'm excited to be here today.
Thank you. Now, I do see a lot of excitement for the topic in the comments, and I would really love to take a few minutes and look at what are some of the big ticket items in the conversations around compensation in your bubble of organizations. And Rich, I would invite you to be our pioneer today, and then everybody just build your conversation. Denise, if I may ask you to stay on mute.
Sure.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, it's a great question. I'm not going to focus specifically on an organization, but I'm going to focus on the broader ecosystem. I think, again, what we've seen from the comments, again, is, everybody asks, is compensation art or science? Maybe it's a little bit of both, right? I've rarely seen, historically, firms that get it exactly right. And again, as I mentioned earlier on in the kind of my introduction, is the pace of change that we're seeing from AI, the pace of change that we're seeing from economic landscapes, political landscapes, et cetera. All of these factors impact what we are, doing as practitioners in compensation strategy. Again, at the end of the day, what is going to differentiate or delineate us from our competitors, but also maybe some of the non-competitors in kind of the environment that we operate in, right? So for me, again, thinking about what are we starting to kind of see, again, from that ecosystem is, again, it's a lot of different thinking. It's thinking that hasn't been really brought forward historically. But again, like I said, what was good yesterday is not good today, may not be good tomorrow. So I think, again, from a practitioner lens, we have to be very agile. We have to be nimble and very intentional with some of the, design and strategies that we're putting together at the end of the day, because compensation, candidly, is one of the largest expenses for firms and organizations. So if you don't get it right, there's consequential impact or pull-through impact for a firm at the end of the day.
Yeah, Rich, you're so right. And I think about the past few years as well with respect to hybrid and remote work. And back in the day, it was easier to think about compensation in terms of the local markets, right? And I'm speaking from a U.S. centric basis, so I realize that there are complexities out there in non-U.S. locations. But in the U.S., as we saw post COVID, the talent pool changed, and so and I can speak more about what the legal industry has been doing. We've really nationalized where we're recruiting for talent, and even thinking about non-attorneys, for example. Competing with, to your point, Rich, other industries. We need to keep a pulse on what, as you mentioned, our non-competitors are doing, because that's not only who we're attracting talent from, but who we're losing talent to. And I can't say that I found anyone has been able to really solve that equation just yet. But I think the one thing that we just have to be careful about as leaders in compensation is not to get too technical. Dare I say? I think sometimes we try to come up with the perfect measurement, and try to figure out what is that precise amount of compensation, for each person. But really, I think we should be thinking about ranges, and those ranges, unfortunately, fortunately or unfortunately, depending on your perspective, are going to shift depending on what's going on in the world.
Just to add to what Joe just said, to be honest, one of the challenges I've been faced by is through the HR team by itself. We think that this is a payroll or a compensation team responsibility. However, from my humble opinion, this is everyone's responsibilities in the human resources. And I'll just give you a very small example. Last month, we were on an exercise of analyzing job descriptions, and we asked one of these people to write a job description, turn it into points, and then into money, as you know, through the point method approach. And it equals, for example, $5,000. We asked the same person to write the same job description again in the same exact time. And when we turned the exercise again, it equaled $7,000 for the same job description, just for adding 1 or 2 lines or competencies or needed certificates or something. And this man is totally dedicated for the job, but probably he's not aware of the connection between what he's doing in this piece of paper called job description and how it will end up by end of the day turning it into money or into a pay that will fit in a pay structure, and later on it's a long story. So one of the things that we are trying to focus on right now, at least within my area, is getting everyone in the HR team to be part of this pay equity concept in general, with keeping confidentiality and numbers and salary structure and everything.
It's quite interesting. For me, it's about outcomes, right? It's about getting the best talent and retaining the best talent that you possibly can and keeping them happy when they're here. And I actually love the fact that the pay corridors have gone, right? And that you're actually looking at, in the US in particular, a national landscape now. We're attracting talent from, I think Joe and Rich, you mentioned this, from places that we could never get talent before because of things like flexible working, like moving to remote first or hybrid, or when you're in the office, or having we closed this and shifted to remote first, but we have things like a company offsite. So draws like that, I mean, we can't go pre-COVID. We're not going back. This kind of like forcing everyone into the office and different things. I have another opinion about that. We'll see how it works. But we're not going back. We can't go back. So people do want to see their daughter's soccer game, or they do want to be very productive. As I said in the beginning, people want to do great things in work. They want to be productive. They don't want to come into an office and sit on Zooms for 8 hours a day. So if you're going to bring people back, re-architect the way that we do work. But it's all about that attraction. And I think the breaking down of the pay corridors, attracting people in a different way. If your candidate is all about, I want more money, somebody will always pay more money. I was at, very hot tech companies like Splunk, and everyone wants to be there, but Splunk wanted to pay like Google and we couldn't. And so you're always kind of up in the ante, but it's that personal, like, how do you attract that individual? How do you motivate them? And then how do you persuade them to stay when they're here? By compensating them equitably, fairly for the work that they do, giving them great work to do, but making it personal for them. And I think moving away from pay corridors, posting pay ranges on job recs, and also finding out what motivates the individual can go such a long way now. Things have changed and we've moved on. And I think it's actually, most of it is overwhelmingly positive.
I think one of the things we don't talk enough about is recognition. While cash and benefits are table stakes, right? You got to get that right, and you have to be competitive and be equitable. we don't talk about recognition and just saying thank you. I think the other factor that sometimes we miss when our heads are totally focused on comp and benefits is relationships, and making sure that we're helping people have connections that are authentic and relationships that are healthy in the workplace. And that means intentional work with senior leaders and managers to help them understand how to give feedback, how to receive feedback, how to ensure that employees aren't just being told this is what needs to be accomplished, but also given the resources and tools needed to accomplish things, and listening. When an employee comes and tells you, I'm burned out, I can't do it all, I need more staff, I need, the software, etc. I think we've, in many organizations that I see, have rotated to the point of getting more from each individual, but to the point where we're burning people out. And I have deep concerns that cash doesn't solve that. At some point, they're going to walk. So we have to be balanced in our approach, not just with the total rewards design and delivery, but also with the relationships and understanding each other's needs and not expecting more than what is reasonable.
And maybe just to add on what my peers have said here as well, and I know this is a conversation around compensation, pay equity, and benefits, et cetera. But what I continue to see in my prior lives has been everything is a compensation issue. But I think Suzanne and some others have mentioned this. There are issues that impact compensation, not necessarily compensation issues. Lack of role clarity, incomplete job descriptions, poor leadership, poor performance management, all of those pull through in terms of impacting compensation. And again, I think that's the easiest narrative that I've seen leaders lean into. It's a compensation issue. It's a compensation issue, but it's not. It may be an issue, but what is the problem that we need to focus on and solve for? So again, while we're talking about comp, I just want to make sure that, again, we think about what my peers have said, job descriptions, role clarity, et cetera. Those are the pieces that impact it from an outcome.
Love this conversation, and so many of the points that all of you mentioned just reminded me of things that previous panelists said in other conversations, and it all boils down. I'm sorry, I ran out of English and it's barely Wednesday. It all boils down to how people's relationship with work has changed fundamentally, what they are willing to invest in work, what purpose work serves in their larger purpose of life, and what they expect out of work, and whether that comes out expressed through compensation or flexible work expectations or motivation, or how they make their decision to accept an offer or to look for something else. It all boils down to what role work plays in our lives at the moment. And Suzanne, I would ask you to lead us into the next slice of our time together. With all this happening, what are some of the skills that HR practitioners must learn? Maybe there are some skills that they must unlearn in order to go in that balancing act of pay equity, benefits, and performance. And there are extra points available for skills that are maybe not within the circle of the usual suspects.
Yeah, it's a great question. And just to touch on the context so that you set up, which I think is really important, I do believe that the employee-employer contract is, again, forever changed. We're not going back to pre-COVID. So it is basically, I talk to CEOs often, and they're like, oh my God, people don't want to work. They don't want to come into the office. I don't really think that's true. But I do think that we've had more flexibility, different opportunities, different challenges and constraints for sure. And again, that we're not going back. So in this way that people, to your point, might want to think about work differently, generationally, differently in purpose, then employers have to flex that way as well. And going on to the question you asked about, like, I would venture, there's something that really peeves me, and it's the term human resources. I'm just putting it out there. It gives me like, it just, my team, no, we are the people team. right? We're not human resources. I don't like HCM. I don't like human capital management. And we're not a resource. We're people. We're in the people business. And I think, again, we can get very, especially in the comp space, and I think Rich alluded to this, very precious about comp ranges and job descriptions and stuff. We're about the people. We're about attracting great talent, onboarding great talent, developing them when they get there, helping them be their best selves, coaching them, doing things with empathy, being that real chief listener for the company, and actually acting on things like feedback. So when you think about benefits and stuff, what we did at IPSI was, like, people tell you in the engagement surveys, I read every single comment we get, and they're very vociferous. I think a noisy org is a healthy org. So things like flexible working, co-pay for mental health. We all know now that mental health is the same as physical. Well, our workforce is super young, mostly female. So family forming benefits, volunteerism, doing things that folks are part of. But your team has to listen first and foremost. Yeah, they have, like, you know, technical pieces that they do. I started in consultancy, which was, we talked about the T-shaped consultant. You've got core skills across the top, and then your technical depth. So it might be talent acquisition, it might be compensation, it might be benefits. Yeah, there's all that. But those core skills and that empathy and love for people and helping them grow and letting them maybe be alumni out in the wild outside of your virtual doors and then welcoming them back in. That's what the people team of the future should be doing. Now, there's some things for sure, analytics, let's be honest, like, you need, that's your foundation. The same way as compensation is your Lego, right? The foundation of your house, the other foundation is your data, right? And it's all about analytics, but it's that listening, I think, and using that to me would be the next wave in terms of, like, the future of the people team. And Josh Bersin does a great kind of skills capability matrix of, like, here's the kind of top 9, 12 things that the future kind of people team need. Sorry, that's probably more than you wanted there, Manola.
It's absolutely perfect. We are here to exchange insights. Let's see who wants to grab the e-mic after you, Rich.
Oh, yeah. Just reading some of the comments here. I think from a practitioner perspective, we have to break some of the mindsets that we've had historically. Again, what worked well historically is not potentially working well today and probably won't work well in the future. I think I'm not going to use some of the kind of the verbiages of solution mindset, things like that. I think we all know that those have been kind of thrown to us. I think, again, from our perspective, being able to pull the thread through on a particular item, a particular issue, thinking about the broader issues in context. I've seen the comments about, you know, the work-life balance, things like that. Yes, it's not just, and again, as I made reference to, it's not just a compensation issue. It's a bigger issue, right? What are we trying to solve for at the end of the day? I love the thoughts that are coming through in terms of how do we think about it differently. But if I could share one thing, is you have to have an open mindset. You have to be able to kind of break the mold in terms of what you thought was really good. It may not be, again, good, right? And be fine with that and be open to making the change or being flexible or agile in that process.
I think looking from just a wider perspective on the pay equity and compensation thing, one of the topics is definitely the performance and linking performance in an objective way to our pay structure. And this has been a challenge for me personally, because the more I focus on the pay structure itself, I lose focusing on the wider picture of performance, which start by competency framework and so on. And here, this is very important to gather the efforts of the whole HR team from different perspectives. People working on performance, people working on talent management, as one of the comments on the chat is referring to. This is all linking to this pay structure. So this pay structure, from my perspective, or pay equity thing, is 365 days exercise. It needs to be audited, carefully updated, enhanced on a regular basis. I run personally what we call it internal pay equity audit in our company, for example, every 3 months. I wouldn't say that I come up with fantastic results, but there are some results. There are some observations that we observe that there is a turnover, for example, at this specific job for a specific reason. Is it pay related or it is something else? Let's validate, but at least running this internal audit, for example, is something that would help by end of the day. So I totally agree that the pay equity and building a right pay structure is related to the rest of the HR activities, if I may say.
I think the other thing that comp professionals tend to miss is how the company makes business or how the company makes money. I mean, that is fundamental. You need to really understand what are the levers of the business and how do all of the different roles in the business and the different functions play into that big picture. That's going to, and I'm not saying that every compensation professional needs to know to the detail of what every single job does, but they should know at a macro level, here's how the structure works. And here's how that impacts the company's bottom line. And that's where you can really have more impactful discussions about grading, salary increases, especially when you start talking about incentive compensation, bonus planning and things like that. The other thing that I think is important is the relationship with the HR business partners. It's very important for comp not to really just be that behind the scenes person that's just crunching numbers, but really leveraging those business partners to understand human behavior. Often the loudest voice in the room is the one that gets the money, right? And that's what pay equity is trying to undo. And we see that magnified, especially when someone's leaving the organization and managers freaking out. How is all this work going to get done? Really working with the business partners to just understand what are those motivators at the individual level that we've been talking about in this panel. To just understand, I think, Rich, it was your words, what are we trying to solve for here? I've seen, in the years that I've been doing this, sometimes managers try to throw money at a problem where the problem really is bad management, mismatch of skills, misalignment with culture. Your money might defer the problem. You might be able to bridge that gap for 6 months to a year. But typically, unless you deal with those root issues at the same time, you're going to have the attrition anyway. So I think having those honest discussions are going to be important. And it's on us as comp leaders to really ask those questions and not expect the details to come to us. We really have to probe.
Joe, I love your comment there. And I say this and not to, again, put any less value on our partners in the process. But I've always said our HR business partners are the windows and the doors for us in these COEs to the business, right? So they can open the door, they can open the window, shed light on the process, or they can close the door very quickly and make it very challenging to move things forward at the end of the day. So spot on.
I wrote a post recently about training your HR BPs to handle pay decisions, define the work that you can hand off to them, document those processes, and then do the training and deliver all the tools the HR business partners and talent acquisition need to do the job offers for new hires, movement of people around the organization. And then you also have to audit what they're doing, right, to make sure that they're following the guidelines in your processes. But they are your best resource in order to get quick decisions made related to pay. And they have great insights because they're usually closer to your internal business clients. So I'm passionate about making sure that comp doesn't just do comp, that it's the whole HR community involved in it to make sure comp should be leading the charge and training, but they shouldn't be the only ones doing it. And we shouldn't be the comp police either. We should be more internal business advisors than the police.
I must preface the next question with a small confession. I was very tempted to ask you what are the most difficult conversations you have with senior leadership for a more or for the most meaningful future of compensation. But then I listened to everything that you shared, and actually Shadi sparked the nuance of my question. So Shadi, you will go first, because I would like to ask you, what are the most difficult yet most critical conversations we must have within the HR function for the most meaningful future of compensation?
Well, there's a lot of them, but on top of my mind, usually one of the challenging questions that I go through is adjusting our pay structure strategy for the coming year, for example. This is a regular yearly challenge that we go through. To be honest, and this is probably not the traditional answer. The challenge is not about the percentage that we want to increase or yes or no. It's about how you as HR would make sure that we will have an ROI on this raise, for example, how this will return on the company. So usually the challenge for me is not to upgrade our pay structure, for example, but how to prove that it's going the right way and it will pay back. Personally, this is my usual yearly challenge, to be honest, in a positive way.
Thank you.
I would, Joe alluded to this. I honestly, in my humble opinion, I don't believe that comp is a problem unless it's a problem. Like, unless you're way off the market, unless you're not paying somebody fairly or equitably, it inevitably or usually it's not comp. And some of the most difficult conversations are around feedback, development, performance, having tough conversations. I'm not a believer in PIPs, for example. Like, if you do good performance management, you're not surprising somebody once a year with a PIP or once every 6 months with a PIP. You're having tough conversations and good conversations of, Suzanne, when you do this, you're awesome. But by the way, you're going to have to watch that, or you're going to have to improve your performance here, or you just got promoted. So getting a good kind of like, oh, as expected on your performance, you've still got some gaps, and that's good. That's where you are. Or in order to be great, Suzanne, you have to do this. Or by the way, you're maybe not in the right role, or maybe you're not in the right organization or the right company. Those are tough conversations. And I think having the skills and the capabilities to have those conversations in a very positive way are some of the toughest, but the most value adding kind of things that we can do as people professionals.
Just taking 10 seconds to clarify that PIP stands for Personal Improvement Plan, making sure that acronyms come with subtitles across languages and cultures and organizations. Rich, I see you unmuted.
Yeah, I think one of the things that very consistent with what I've heard from my peers here as well. One of the things I wish we would have more meaningful conversations within our own backyard is around job descriptions, and how I wished people would have courage to push back when leaders are saying it's like a kitchen sink, right? Well, they do this and they do this and they do this. There's the reality that they cannot do all of that, right? And we're forcing a square peg into a round hole at the end of the day, because we want to, right, wrong, or indifferent, meet the needs of compensation. And I think I've seen the comments here as well. It should be about the position, not the person. But we know compensation is very personal, right, to all of us, no doubt. But it is about the role and the responsibilities. It's not about that person per se. Can they be successful? And often I see bad experiences because we've created these job descriptions that are so massive that nobody can be successful. So we already have a bad candidate experience when they come into the organization because we've set them up for failure because we tried to solve for their personal kind of perspective. So I wish, again, as practitioners, we would have those more courageous conversations to say, look, these JDs just don't make sense. What is the reality? But again, that's kind of, that's our reality, I think.
And I often wish when I get a job description to evaluate, like, what business problem is this going to solve? Do you need more headcount? Is there something not getting done that needs to be done now? Do we have a new regulation or legal requirement, et cetera? And sometimes they can't explain what business problem that new job is going to to solve. And so I tend to send people back and go, you need to come up with a business case, because it's more than just writing the job description. We shouldn't be adding to headcount and adding to the cost of labor unless there's something that it's going to support in terms of business success.
And if I could go back to a point, Suzanne, you were making about the PIPs, I mean, spot on. And but I'd like to add to that, what grinds my gears as a comp leader is when we get to the merit increase process and you have guidelines, right? And usually if you're not meeting expectations or you're on a PIP, of course, it depends on the company, but generally you don't get a merit increase or a bonus. And once managers understand how that game works, they play games sometimes, not all, but I've had some tough conversations with managers that have wanted to give someone that hard message, right? You're not meeting expectations, but they didn't want to give them that rating because they still wanted to give them something. And I think that's where, as comp professionals, we need to really work with our HR business partners to figure out how do we work within that gray area so that the employee's getting the feedback that they need. And if they're on the upswing, in my opinion, we should be talking about giving them something and giving them a little bit of encouragement, but it all depends on the circumstances. One thing that I'm seeing very concerning to me in the comments is there's been a couple of comments about how PIPs are only to cover the company, and it is a foregone conclusion that someone's going to be fired. If that's the way your company's operating, you as an HR leader really need to have a conversation with your executive team. That is not how PIP should be working. A PIP, I have seen in my career, people come off of PIPs and actually become very successful in their careers. Sometimes PIPs open up conversations too about what we call miscast, someone who might not be excelling in this role, but gee, if we can figure out their skill set and figure out another role that the company needs for that skill set, they could be successful. Does it always happen that way? No. Do some companies use it to protect themselves? Of course, but I don't think that's the way that it should be.
Denise, please.
I was going to piggyback off of that. You know, people can feel your intent. If your intent in writing a PIP and delivering the message is to get them out the door, they can feel that. You can't hide that per se. And it should be done with the intention of helping them be successful. If you've already made up your mind they need to go, then let them go. That's just, yeah. It's unfortunate that there are people who are don't have the integrity and character to do the right thing.
I could feel that this conversation should be able to go on for at least 2 hours. I see the energy in the comments. I can feel you are very passionate about the topic. So we have about 5 minutes left for the wrap-up round. And I would love to hear from you. Do you have any famous last words for today? Any kind of inspiration to leave our audience with? I was thinking, do you have like a North Star when it comes to compensation conversations that you can share with people in the audience? And we will go counterclockwise from how we started. So Denise, I will ask you to go first. And I will also encourage people in the audience to leave their own insights and bits of support and inspiration for us. So Denise.
I have a phrase I use, go slow to go fast. So go slow to me means build the job architecture, build the comp guidelines, write down your processes, make sure you've got all the tools and resources in place to support the needs of the business and your employee population. And then you can go faster, right? Then you can utilize those things to train your HR business partners and to be more strategic in your advice. When you're reinventing the wheel every day and going back into the email and saying, what was the last time I had this situation and what did we say versus having policy and guidelines published, you're just kind of creating more stress for yourself. I would also say embrace AI. AI is not going to go away. As an HR community, we need to embrace AI and demonstrate how it can impact our productivity. I do think it's going to, once we get past the hurdle of having it impact our productivity as individuals, it's going to change the way we do work. And we're going to have AI prompt generators and people that we manage to help get the best out of our AI tools. But don't be afraid to jump in and embrace new technology that can support yourself and your initiatives that help get the organization that you work for to be more successful.
Thank you. Shadi.
Pay equity and pay structure. equals transparency. This is a humane exercise, not an Excel sheet exercise, not a black box. And it involves everyone in the organization. It's not only the HR people responsibility. That's what I believe in. Thank you so much for the chance.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think my phrase is it's not about yes or no, it's about how. In compensation, I think people want to treat it very kind of black and white, but compensation oftentimes is a very gray area. And as I've heard Joe mention and Suzanne, et cetera, mention as well, the business acumen, understanding where's their flexibility, et cetera. How are we treating people? Are we being consistent, fair, et cetera? So again, my kind of thing is, and again, it's a play on the word. It's not about yes, it's not about no, it's about how. How do we get there? How do we make sure that we're thinking about the associate, the colleague, the firm, the business, et cetera? So that would be my kind of phrase.
Thank you so much, Rich. Joe.
I'd say spend a lot of time with the business leaders to not only educate them on compensation, but also have them iterate with you within reason, of course. I think it's important for business leaders to be able to make the compensation or apply the compensation structure to their reality. And that can help you not only with communication, but also execution. So building those relationships over time is going to be key.
Suzanne.
And I wanted to plus one with Denise's point on recognition and Shadi's point on transparency, both super important. But my personal leadership mantra is growth and comfort do not coexist, right? You've got to let people grow and develop either individually in a team or as an organization. So for me, compensation, pay equity, benefits, etc. That's the foundation. That's the building block. Do it in line with your values. Do it market competitively. Do it transparently. Do it fairly, equitably. But just let people run. Like get out of their way and let them be their best selves.
Thank you so very much for being here today. And the reason why I have been smiling so big over the past couple of minutes is because right before I jumped on the link for this panel, I put together a slide for a change conversation I'm preparing for work. And I used the Navy SEAL, slow is smooth and smooth is fast. So this was a sign from the universe that I was onto something. Thank you for being here. Please join us tomorrow for the third day of our summit. And tomorrow is all about driving HR strategy for impact. Thank you for taking the time and energy to be here, panelists, time and curiosity to join us in the conversations. Keep the comments coming because we do keep an eye on them. And many times we follow the energy in your comments and come up with topics for future panels. So thank you very much, everyone. Enjoy a wonderful rest of the week, a Friday, and I will see many of you again very soon. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Lola. Thank you all. Take care.
Pleasure. Bye.